The June 11th, 2018 agenda meeting of the Milltown Borough Council will now come to order. Will the clerk please call roll?
Council President Dixon?
Present.
Councilman Farkas?
Here.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Present.
Councilman Ligotti?
Here.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Here.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 present.
Thank you. Will the clerk please read the meeting statement?
Let the minutes reflect the adequate notice of the holding this regular business meeting of the Borough Council was provided by the adoption of a resolution and the posting, filing, and forwarding of a copy of the same to the official borough newspapers, Home News Tribune, and Star Ledger Publishing Companies on February 20th, 2018. Public participation in this meeting will be permitted during public hearings and after the agenda of scheduled matters has been completed.
Thank you. Please rise for a moment of silence, followed by a salute to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. The first item on the agenda this evening is a proclamation for George Geis. I would ask George to meet me up by the microphone. Now you're in trouble, Grandpa. Come on over here. Get a smile for the TV camera. We're going to do this. Yeah.
Concentrate on the left side.
I think he wants to take a picture first. That's it. Okay. This is a mayoral proclamation. Proclamation of life of George Geis. 90 years of living, laughing, and loving. Whereas on May 1st, 1928 in Milltown, New Jersey, George Geis was born to his parents, Rose and Robert. And whereas George has spent his whole life as a resident and integral member of the Milltown community. And whereas George married his longtime love, Dot, and in their 63 years of marriage, they have had 2 children, Cindy and Cheryl, 3 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. And whereas George has made community involvement a priority in his life. George has been a member of the Milltown Fire Department for 66 years, has served as an usher at Our Lady of Lourdes, is a member of the American Legion Post 25, is a member of the Senior Citizens Club, and a member of the Men's Club at the Senior Center. And whereas George has not also been a servient member of the Milltown community, he has also served the country as a staff sergeant in the U.S. Air Force, even during the Korean War. And whereas George has always found enjoyment in reading, yard work, watching television, handling the local groundhog Milltown Mail, and working with the fire department. However, the most joyful part of George's life has always been his time spent with his loving wife and their beautiful family. Now therefore I, Eric A. Stieber, Mayor of the Borough of Milltown, do hereby issue this proclamation in honor of George Geis's 90th birthday. May he be blessed with many more happy and healthy years. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the Borough of Milltown to be affixed this 11th day of June 2018. George, I'd like to present you with this official mayoral proclamation.
And I'd like to ask everyone to join in a short rendition of Happy Birthday for George.
1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Grandpa. Happy birthday to you.
All I can say is I want to thank you for the kind words and for this proclamation. And it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's coming to an end soon as far as the fire department goes.
Yeah.
I've certainly been blessed, and it's been a great honor to serve Milltown. our wonderful chief, all the firemen here. They've been great. And I want to thank you again for the proclamation and the council.
Well, we've been blessed by you, George. Thank you so much. God Okay, next on this evening's agenda, Milltown Fire Department Scholarship Presentation to Thomas Megar Diello and Ashley Murphy. Take it away, gentlemen.
Yep. All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Borough Council, Borough professionals, guests, and fellow residents. In addition to providing around-the-clock fire protection to the residents of Borough Milltown, members of our department undertake various fundraising activities throughout the year to support a variety of charitable endeavors. With proceeds from our largest event, the annual Charles Garbarini Memorial Golf Outing, going towards awarding 2 scholarships each year to 2 high school seniors who meet a variety of academic and civic requirements, as well as submitting an essay about overcoming tragedy and how the legacy of others provides a positive influence on one's life. The members of the department chose a specific essay as the cornerstone of these awards based on one man, Lieutenant Charles Garbarini of the FDNY, whose life was taken from this world in the barbaric acts of September 11th. Charlie was a very good friend and colleague of former Milltown Fire Department and Milltown resident, current FDNY Captain Jerry Cookie Silcox. After the horrific day 6.5 years ago, we asked Cookie, what can we do to help our brothers and sisters in the FDNY? His reply was simple: you can help the Garbarini family. Thus began a bond with a family of the highest caliber, a family who, along with the families of 343 firefighters and 71 law enforcement personnel, paid the ultimate sacrifice for this nation, and a family we are proud to call one of our own. Over the past 16 years, tens of thousands of dollars have been raised and donated to the Garbarini family, as well as charities such as the Arthur C. Lufburn Foundation and Autism New Jersey. And 7 years ago, with the encouragement and blessing of the Garbarini family, members of the department established and began issuing scholarships in Charlie's memory to deserving Milltown High School students. Yet sadly, tragedy struck close to home in 2013 with the untimely passing of lifelong Milltown resident, 18-year-old Nicole Cerise. To honor her memory, the department consolidated scholarships into 2 offerings, one in memory of Charlie and one in memory of Nicole. It is in their memory that we proudly award the following scholarships for 2018. Scholarship in memory of Charles Garbarini is being awarded Thomas Megar Diallo, and scholarship in memory of Nicole Cerise is being awarded to Ashley Murphy this evening. Can you come on up, please?
Awesome.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. And congratulations to this year's recipients of the awards. Okay, next on this evening's agenda is Resolution 18-184, Calvin Coates Eagle Scout Project, Milltown Little Free Library. Excuse me, young man. Hold on 1 second before you get started. We're going to let things quiet down. Now, you can stay right there. We're just looking at the quiet down for so everyone can hear you.
All right. Good to go.
Sure.
All right. Hello, my name is Calvin Coates from Troop 33. I'd like to propose my Eagle Scout project, a little free library in Gloria Bradford Park. I spoke with Ralph Jazanowski from Public Works, and he has no problem with the areas I have selected, as well as Bonnie from the Milltown Public Library, and she is also okay with those areas. That's pretty much that. All I think.
Excellent.
All right.
Any questions for this young man?
The library, that's going to be constructed, and where is it going to be placed?
I have 3 pictures here. I don't know if you would be able to see them, but I'm thinking probably like right here in the center of the park, right next to these areas.
Could you explain to the council and to the folks here exactly what a little free library is?
A little free library is a place where books would be held and someone could take books, read them, and return them, or a different book at any time they want to.
That's very nice.
All right.
And any ideas on what this structure is going to look like?
It's basically a box on a stick.
A box on a stick?
A little house.
Yeah.
It's going to look like a little house?
Yeah.
Box on a stick?
Mm.
All right, very good. And when do you think you are going to start this project?
Hopefully I'll start building June 30th, and I don't know exactly when I'll place it in the park.
Okay, are you going to be looking for donations of books?
The library does have a surplus of books that they are willing to donate.
That's marvelous. And so people can come at any time,
Yeah,
take a book, leave a book, read a book?
exactly.
That's a great idea. Any other questions for this young man?
No, they did something similar in Helmetta a few years ago. It was very successful all around town, the little libraries. So I think you're on to something. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, young man.
Thank you for your time.
Good luck. Okay, next on the agenda, PRAB, weatherization and lead information.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I put that on the agenda. The Puerto Rican Action Board reached out to me about the weatherization and lead information programs. They sent me an attachment. They weren't able to be here to do a full presentation. I just wanted you to be aware there's several programs included in here, including utility gas assistance programs. Each has its own particular income range, so it might not be available for one particular program, but there might be another program that is available. So I do have that information. I forwarded it to the clerk. You know, feel free to reach out to us at the senior center. I provided copies today to them, but that's for low income and seniors. It could be, you know, multiple people in the homes, and there is different, like I said, income ranges. So you feel free to request that information, or I can forward a link to anybody if they're interested.
And as a point of clarification, this is the...
Home energy assistance.
Thank you.
Weatherization also that has...
And the name of the organization?
It's PRAB, it's abbreviated, but they are worked with the state to present these programs and get people signed up for them. The Puerto Rican Action Board.
Okay, so I think a good point is that people have to understand that this is not only for people of Puerto Rican descent. This is for anyone who falls in a economic area. So if you are looking for help, I guess, for heating and other utility costs.
That's correct.
That you could reach out to them, and if you are able to, you can take advantage of their help.
And it is on a state website, energyassistance.nj.gov, but it does tell you to reach out to your local participating agency, and PRAB is our local agency.
Anything else?
Well, that's it for that.
Okay. Any questions for the councilwoman? Okay, seeing none. Next item for discussion, TCC presentation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I went to the Transportation Coordinating Committee meeting. They are partnering with organizations to provide services to the municipalities, and they presented this presentation that Lou is working on.
See it.
And basically, what the county is providing is municipal stormwater assistance and how it affects on transportation. You can go to the next slide, though. The presentation outlines stormwater definitions. Basically, as you know, we do have issues in our town due to impervious surfacing. So stormwater can soak into the soil to infiltrate. And if it doesn't have that capability, it's a runoff, and sometimes it ends up going into our nearby streams, our water bodies. And it's a resource and important to us because we need to work on solutions. And the MS4 permit, there are different and new requirements. They're providing assistance with that as well, training our personnel, our staff. There's also an upcoming training session towards the end, which will also include your municipal council, other elected officials to attend. They're going to support the particular information regarding stormwater in terms of the storm drains or catch basins. You could go to the next slide, Lou. And basically, it gives you a little background about the Clean Water Act, what the system components are, storm inlets. Sorry. What they're doing with the storm inlets is that there is a mapping service that the NJDEP has created, and it's going to allow us to take pictures and store this information on a database. It won't be, you know, in-house. It'll be, I guess, on their database. And what this is importance of is that the county is going to be assisting and working with municipalities to accomplish this goal. We have information that will provide, you know, about the curbs, gutters, wallies, storm pipes. This is what they're looking for. In some areas we have them, we'll record them. You can go to the next slide. There have been changes to the permit, and this is the various areas that have changed for the Tier A municipalities. That's, you know, the mostly densely populated areas. We also have other rural areas, non-coastal, and public complex areas, the colleges, universities, and hospitals, the highway agencies, counties, NJDOT Parkway. And they have been doing some stormwater solutions. In some areas, there are porous asphalt on Turnpike, I know, and some areas of the Parkway. So we're all taking from the state their recommendations, and we're trying to implement them. But now they went from the state level to the county level, and the county is going to reach out to the municipalities to work this in on our own areas. Next slide. The municipal separate stormwater system, which is the MS4, was what they call for the permit. We do have different additional federal and state requirements. We want to develop and implement a stormwater management program. And this has been spoken about for about a couple of years, but now they really want to try to work with municipalities or county and get a program to reduce the discharge of pollutants to the maximum extent practical. Develop measurable goals that quantify program improvements. So once they record everything, there'll be more training and more discussions from the county. There's an MS4 group that discusses things. It's mostly the staff members, professionals, like your engineers and such that do participate in this group, and they meet, I believe, monthly or quarterly. They are going to be doing more public education There is currently brochures available on NJDEP, so we'll look to have that information, maybe coordinate with the Green Team Environmental Commission or DPW, more information about that, how we can get the public involved and participate. Illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site stormwater runoff control. That could be your rain gardens, various other solutions. One I have later is rain barrels, maybe with residents if they want to consider that. Post-construction stormwater management for new development and redevelopment. So all this information is will be educated through the municipality staff as well as professionals, the developers and redevelopers as well as the engineers. Pollution prevention and good housekeeping. Why you should pick up litter, clean up the basins, help out with that around the area. I don't mean digging down, but on the roadway part. So they will be doing more public education for this. And the county wants to get the most from municipalities to a great start. So they want to do this inventory of their system. Of course, having an inventory would be an important first step to an inspection program. And this is information that they provided regarding transportation-related requirements. You can go to the next one. The inlet mapping and regular inspection. They're trying to, this is what they want to do and working with municipalities. That's what they want to assist us with. Go ahead, next. And of course, street sweeping and proper disposal is very important. So they're going to be reaching out to the staff and professionals. You can continue. Of course, they have some brochures available, information that they'll be providing. So the public, we can all work together to accomplish this. Next one. Of course, don't litter. And pet waste, of course, we don't have any dog parks in this town. And if, walk them, we would appreciate you cleaning up for any dog owners. Next one. And what they want to do here is, this particular slide is referring to regionalizing, so that if a municipality is unable to budget for this particular cleaning of their trucks or proper disposal of things too, they're going to work on getting more meetings together and find out if there's going to be a certain area in the county where they could just go clean the trucks, as opposed to everyone purchasing a cleaning system or having a wash for their truck systems. And some municipalities may not even have that at the present time. Next slide. And here's green infrastructure. This has been drilled in for the last 5 years. Rutgers University, as you know, has been assisting us with some of the rain gardens, but there's additional stormwater solutions. So this is just one of them. And on the roadway, how they've tried to deal with the stormwater runoff. Next. And why it is important. It's important that the county realizes we need to do something now to keep our water, better quality. And we all have to do our part, be it clean up litter, picking up waste from our dogs, but also try to find solutions so that we have a healthier water system with stormwater runoff. As you know, just a couple weeks ago, every time we have a big rainfall, flash flooding occurs. We need to find solutions. Excuse me. In the past 3 or 4 years, we've had Jersey Waterworks doing collaborations, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And the county wants to do that as well. Next slide, I think. And this is the mapping that will be occurring. You can go to the next slide, Lou. And this is the potential support that they're going to be providing. They already started the mapping in 2017, and they were going to improve on it. They want to do a computerized asset management system as well. And then there will be annual reporting, indoor storage of salt and de-icing material. They want to try to do regionalize that as well, so that it's not, within each municipality. It'll be easier. also storage and disposal of the street sweeping, catch basin settlement, and then there is an MS4 user group, as I mentioned before. Next slide. And they have quarterly meetings. On June 18th, which is next Monday, from 9 to 1 p.m., they will be having at the Fire Academy the NJDEP Stormwater Mapping Database Training, and that is supported by the Lower Raritan Watershed Partnership. They'll be doing the training. I've already forwarded that information to our DPW supervisor, so I'm sure he's registered. So this is very important that we all take part in supporting what our municipal staff is doing. Plus, once everybody's involved, it just gives us better, services as well as a better solution for stormwater management. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for the councilwoman?
Yeah, I actually have a few. Are they requiring us or requesting of us at this time to do any sort of mapping or provide them with additional information? Do our crews need to go out and tell them where stuff is, or are they just going through? Are they going to mandate that we perform any sort of additional work to gather this information for the county? Have they indicated?
I don't know if it's a real mandate as per se right now, but they're trying to get municipalities to this training session. There will be additional training sessions so that they can learn about the software, learn about the partnership that the county wants to do with municipalities, and yes, increase their locations of where the catch basins are, the conditions of them, so that we can all plan to work better for solutions.
Just seems a couple of the items that you mentioned, it seems like we're actually taking care of with our new DPW facility, the salt shed, an area to clean off the truck, the underground storage area for the contaminants, the street sweeping debris, all that stuff to make sure that we're not polluting the lower Raritan or Lawrence Brook and getting those contaminants out of there. So that was interesting.
Any other questions? Okay, next on the agenda, rain barrel program.
Yes, I had mentioned in the past about the rain barrel program. I just basically, I do have a handout that I will be able to forward you in an email, or I will have them printed and put out here. If anyone is interested in having a rain barrel, it is a good solution if you just have a downspout that just drops into your yard. I mean, some people need a solution, and that might be, the least expensive way of finding a solution. And you can utilize the water, of course, for watering your flowers, watering your vegetable plants, and there's guidelines, there's assistance to help build one, and I do have a capability of getting free barrels if anyone is interested. So feel free to reach out to me or the clerk's office in case you happen to stop over and want to. I'll make sure that on the table outside there'll be copies of the information, and any of the other programs that you're interested in, just let me know about green infrastructure. We have a green team, municipal green team. They like to be active and share and educate. You can certainly reach out to us as well.
Any questions for the council? Okay, seeing none. Rain garden program.
Yes, rain garden. The Milltown Park rain garden will be installed this week with Rutgers University. I am looking for volunteers for the plantings. I have reached out to several groups in town, and I'm waiting to hear from them. It's going to be either started tomorrow and finish up Wednesday, or Wednesday to Thursday. They'll confirm tomorrow. They were just finishing up an extra project at Spotswood, and they will be here this week to assist us with the Milltown Park rain garden.
Any questions for the councilwoman? Seeing none, we shall move on. Next on the agenda, proposed park permit ordinance discussion.
I'll take the lead on this. First off, Councilwoman Kerber obviously has been very busy with a number of projects, as we've heard, but she had reached out to me and asked me about preparing an ordinance that would require permits for field use at the borough parks. And the question then became, so I have notes in front of me, do we also want to expand that to parks as well? And I think that's something that Councilwoman Kerber had suggested. So I've been asked to prepare an ordinance in this regard, and I'm really looking for council guidance as to which way to go. Does the council want there to be permit requirements on fields for all users or only for certain users? Just as an example, in a lot of municipalities, permits are not required for the local Little League or Pop Warner. They would simply be able to use it whenever their schedule for practices or games would require, and then the permits would really go out then to entities beyond the usual youth groups or regular groups that might, municipal groups that might be meeting on the field or using the field. So I guess what I'm asking for tonight is not necessarily that the council give me concurrence here tonight, but perhaps if you want to send me some ideas of what you'd like to see in the ordinance. There's some other questions would be if you're issuing permits, would you want a fee to be required, and what would that fee be for use of a borough field and or borough park? Whether proof of insurance should be required, whether the municipality will have a permit application, and if so, who would review that application initially? Would that go to the clerk? Would it go to your recreation department, who would then forward it on to the clerk after an initial review? These are different ways I've seen it done in other municipalities that I've worked with. So that's something to consider, and if we can get some guidance on how you want to do that. Must the approval be given, must the application go in front of the council for approval? So these are the sort of considerations that you would typically have. We can look to other municipalities around the state for the types of ordinances that they have. I'm familiar with a number of municipalities that have such ordinances. So those are the sorts of things that are on for consideration. Again, this Councilwoman Kerber had approached me on this, but without council guidance, I don't want to just take a shot and drop something that's not in keeping with what you have in mind.
Now, would this be for, say, a circus or carnival comes to town, they want to set up, they would have to get a permit and permission?
Typically, it would be for an event like that.
Or like a baseball or softball league wants to use a field, or a soccer league wants to come in and use a field?
If you had a baseball warehouse or entity nearby that said, we want to run we're going to hold a tournament, we want to use your field for this weekend, or your fields for this or these couple of weekends, that sort of thing, you would have them submit an application typically. Application fee, there would be certain requirements such as proof of insurance. But these are the sort of things that you decide what you want in the ordinance. But if you had an outside group, let's say you had any particular, some art group that wanted to use one of your parks for a given weekend so that they could have a number of vendors set up and display their artwork. Just as another example, you would require a permit. You would have this reviewed by someone within the municipality, and a lot of times that application will come before the council to say, no, we can't let them use it that weekend because we have the Veterans Association is using it, typically uses it that weekend, so we have to plan around that. If there's an entity that wants to come into your park and run a 5K sort of event. So these are the...
Don't we have this in place already? Don't we do this anyway?
We have park rental for certain areas of the park, but not field use. So through the recreation department, there is an application that you would be able to rent, like Albert Avenue, the picnic area. You can.
The Little League gives us a letter every year, and they ask to use our fields, and we on council either approve or deny it.
Right.
Don't we have some? Isn't that in place already?
There's nothing in your ordinances about that. That may be a practice in play. Albert Avenue, there is an ordinance for the use of the one facility there.
Well, I think this came up as a result of the applications that came in at the last meeting.
For this,
we had 2 adult leagues that wanted to use Albert Avenue basically every weekend for the duration of the summer, and the concern was the amount of money we spent.
They came before council, they wrote us a letter, they asked permission, we denied it. Isn't it in place already?
No, but then we said if they decided just to come back and use the field, we had really no way to stop them.
Oh, okay.
but this ordinance would also give you an opportunity to determine if you want to ascertain fees, a requirement for insurance. So one of the issues that we had in play was the damage done to the field by those adult leagues. So if we had an ordinance that said this is the fee, whatever it may be, to help cover those costs, or an insurance policy that then we could act upon if damage was done, instead of that being coming out of an incurred debt from us.
All right, then a different question here.
Yeah.
Johnny, Susie, and Joey want to go to, they live on Hill Street, they want to go to Albert Avenue to play kickball. They're going to need a permit?
No, and that's, we.
Organized events.
Organized events
Okay.
only. We did the dress. So it would be an organized event, and if they went and there was monitoring of the field, if they did not have a permit, our police department or code enforcement could ask them to vacate.
Gotcha.
There's also a common problem. I coached baseball for a long time. Had practices scheduled for a field, show up on the field, and there's a group of guys playing soccer. Who governs? Who gets to stay there? Well, if you have set it up that your local youth sports have exclusive use of the field when they have it scheduled, then if there's any issues where you're saying, okay, you guys got to get out of here, and they don't, and they say, no, we're just going to play in the outfield. No, you're not going to play in the outfield. We have the use of these fields exclusively during our season, kind of thing.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
One very quick question. As an example, if the fire department wanted to challenge the first aid squad to a charity softball game, they would still need the permit, correct? Could that be organized?
well, this is where the ordinance, this is the kind of parameters that you could set in your ordinance. That if they're, local groups, local not-for-profit groups or local service groups, then a permit is not required. Or a permit is required, but it's going to be granted, and the fee is waived. Again, that's your discretion as to how you set that up.
So we would have to someone would have to oversee like a calendar in.
The rec department currently oversees the rental of the parks.
Okay.
So this would just be a more guided determination of how we handle that scheduling. And also it would give the council more, not just the council, but the municipality, a more function in, again, insurance, requirements for oversight. If you put in the application, which departments are notified of such. Okay. So if you have a large, like the adult league, if it's noted that that application is also forwarded to the fire department, the police department, or just to be notified of how many people are in the area, things of that nature. It's just a streamlining process.
I'm in one of the municipalities I'm in, built new tennis courts a few years ago, and then an entity that runs tennis programs showed up and started using it every weekend for like a 4-hour block, and the residents started complaining, we can't get on during prime time because this group that has very limited affiliation with the municipality and is probably making a profit somewhere in here is showing up and using it exclusively. Okay. So they created an ordinance that required a permit to be able to use it, or a sign-in sheet run through the rec department. But in any event, this is the kind of guidance that I'm looking for from the council, how you want to shape it. So if you have ideas, if you want to pass them on to me via email, also copy Councilwoman Kerber, because this is her baby, so to speak. But in any event, I'll start drafting it and then can send out a draft and then solicit comments as to how we want to refine it.
My concern would only be in what constitutes organized. You know, if there's a group of gentlemen that come from another town and just decide every weekend that they don't see on our bulletin board the field's in use, you know, it's still not open to our residents, even though it's, you know, just 30 guys that happen to show up and play for 2 hours. And we run into the same situation where it's not a league, but, you know, how do we ensure that our fields are protected for our residents?
We'll come up with something.
Okay. That's my biggest concern. Otherwise, I think it's, you know, I think we're on the right track here.
Anything else? Okay, we shall move on. Tree trimming removal.
That's me. I ask for this to be brought up every time. So last time when we met 3 weeks ago, I mentioned this, and Councilman Revelinsky and Councilwoman Kerber were working on this idea. But I've gotten some information where we may bid or we may do some in-house, so I really wanted to get some clarification on how we're moving forward and what timeline is for this, because it's one of the questions I get asked most often from people is, I have a tree on my front yard that needs to be trimmed or removed, and I've been on a list for 5, 6, 7 years. And also, my question to you guys is, what is do we have one definitive list? Do we have one list for removal and one list for trimming, or is it all just one big list together?
It's one large list. It's the list I gave you the other night when we met.
This one?
Yep, that's the one. So I've, between Dorian and myself, we've actually gone around because we understand that our utility department, you know, some of these trees are on here simply because they're in the wires and it's a nuisance every year for trimming. They pose a risk during a storm where either lines are coming down or the branch is breaking and then you have live lines. So there's an overtime cost associated with that, external labor costs that we feel that they should be on there, and the residents have, the majority of these trees are in fact resident requested trees to be removed. Other ones are sidewalks, wires in the gas line, underground water, gas, your sewer lateral that if the roots grow in, you know, and you're trimming you're getting whatever root control company out to clean your lines out every year. You know, these need to be taken care of, especially if the borough planted that tree between the sidewalk and the apron, you know, so many years ago. So we've gone through about 80 that were on the list, and in doing so have found at least another 40 that should be. Okay. Some of them have been removed. So I know we recently received a quote for a removal of one of the trees because it's completely dead and has dropped some limbs already. And the price of that quote was in the neighborhood of $1,500 for one of the, as I've measured them, this is definitely one of the larger trees. So we did discuss, and Gabriella had reached out to someone who has some dictation on what we can say or do or not do with funds. And those funds cannot be used for personnel. Correct. To do things in-house, so it would result in going out to bid. Right. So the idea here is to compile the list, complete it, and make sure that we have the appropriate information. It's in the format acceptable or palatable for a contractor to bid on the removal of these trees.
So all of them will be going out to bid then? Yes. Okay.
Well, that's our determination. When you have a unit price bid, and Lou I know can chime in on this one, but when you have a unit price bid, you basically put on there your wish list. You say I've got 100 trees that are up to 12-inch diameter, 50 that are up to 24-inch diameter, and then another 50 that are 36-inch diameter, and then however many more. And depending on where the bid numbers come in, you look and you say, you know what, these are really the worst ones. I want these gone, and maybe there's a few more that we don't need to necessarily do these 10-inch because our guys in-house can do those on regular trimming or on an as-needed basis, but well, we have a good price, let's get rid of some of these other really big ones that may not be on the list, but will in a year wind up the borough doing. We've been budgeting for years, and I know you were on finance, so we, the Shade Tree Committee had about $12,000 or $14,000 annually for tree removal. That money basically wound up going over to DPW or outside contractor to remove those. And 2 years ago, we had a blight that kind of passed through town, and if you look up at some of your trees, like half of the tree will look dead and the other half looks nice and alive. We spent the majority of that money that year taking down trees that were just completely dead and on borough property. So we didn't get to do the ones on the list.
So one of my questions is, do we need to provide them with the diameter, or will the company just come out and say, okay, it's X amount of dollars for all of these trees that you have?
No, you're what happens at that point is you run the risk, you're putting the burden of estimating on the contractor, and contractors don't want to do the estimating. They want you to do the work and tell them what you want them to do. So if you give them a list of 250 locations, they're going to go out and look at 3 of them. If they look at those 3 and they just happen to be the worst case scenarios, you're getting a super high price. If they look at 3 and they're the best case scenarios, you get a real low price, and then you get him coming back saying, wait a second, I didn't know they were all in the lines. So the idea is to give a diameter indication, a quantity, so you can adjust your bid number. And typically what you would do is maybe say, I've got this many trees out of the 36-inch diameter, for example. You would say 25 are in the lines, 25 are not in the lines. Give me a price for both. So wherever it winds up, as they go through and mark the trees, they go, we've got a price for that. Let's take that one down. It's really bad.
That's for removal. What about the trimming off the line?
the trimming off the line is what we take care of in-house.
Okay.
But
So
if it's excessive trimming or it's real high up, you know, it's not easily done through the limited staff that we have in the utility department. That's not to speak ill of your guys, John. That's just, we've got 5 guys on a good day. So, you know, it's just, there's a lot of work to do.
So my question was for discussion amongst us tonight, and so that people can hear, what would be the timeline that we would go out to bid for that?
We'd want to go out as soon as possible. I'm hoping that over the next week, we could get this list completed and in a format acceptable, get it over to Ralph so he can use some of the numbers he has for like-sized trees, so we can come up with a budget amount so we understand how much we're putting out there for bid to determine A, if we can afford it, and B, to what extent we want to take all these trees down.
And then the trimming would happen, I mean, I know we're short-handed, but that would take place over the summer months?
When do you typically do your trimming, John? When do you typically do your trimming?
When are we doing it?
Yeah, annually.
It's always ongoing, you know?
Yeah. As you come across stuff, you just...
Yeah.
In terms of an update for the removals, last year we had many trees with leaves, and unfortunately I've been driving around checking out the trees that were in decline. They're now dead. So of course we need to address that and put them on, you know, the top of the list. Some people are discovering that they have a lot of lines, so that information will be provided to the utility department and updated on the spreadsheet so that they know what to target and how to handle it.
Okay.
Just a little background in previous years. One year, when I had this tree list as a member of the Shade Tree Committee, we got quotes from 3 different companies. We didn't go out and measure a single tree. We asked for itemized quotes on each tree that we put out, and the list was only about 80 to 100 trees at the time, and we knew how much money we had. We had that $14,000. So we knew how much we could spend, and we knew what trees we could pick, and obviously the trees that are dangerous, they go to the top of the list. But every company that we went to, the year I was on the Shade Tree Committee, which we got 43 trees and 43 stumps removed, they itemized each for us. And then the second year I had it as a member of council, it was 30 trees and 30 stumps, and they itemized each one for us. I didn't have to go out there. I had to go out there to each residence, just like the 2 council people here are doing, marking down the addresses. It's time consuming, it's a pain in the neck, but if you ask for an itemized list, they're not gonna go out and measure just 2 or 3 trees. You specifically say to them, I need you to itemize each tree. I only have a certain amount of money, and I'm going to pick which ones I can do, the dangerous ones first, and then you know how much money you're left with. You know, unfortunately, it was only $14,000 each year, so it's just minimal things you can do, and with the help of Public Works and Ralph, he got some of those trees down with his workers as well. So I think if you pressure them to do an itemized list, they'll do it. Yeah. They want to make the money. They'll do it.
You know, another thing, Nick, sorry, or Councilman Lagani, but it's just a matter of too, you know, I'm going out and I'm seeing these lists, which, you know, we're working up off of the most up-to-date one, but some have been removed. And then right next door, you're seeing one where the sidewalk is lifted up to the point of seeing the bottom. So it's like, okay, that one was gone, but it's good to say if we're going to do this and we're going to try and take care of almost all the trees on this list, let's be thorough, let's get the best pricing we can, provide the contractor with the information, and, you know, and move forward.
And so we would get that to approve at the next meeting if we move forward with that?
Well, what we'd have to do first is Ralph would have to create basically a budget based on his numbers to see what it would cost us potentially.
One of the major differences in what you're speaking about in getting quotes and why they could inventory them was because it wasn't going out to bid. Since we're going over those thresholds, we actually have to create the specifications. That's a uniform directive on how they respond, which is why we as a borough need to provide that, because if we rely on them, you would have a multitude of different answers potentially, and there could be argument over whether or not we provided ample information. So it's slightly different with the bid.
2.5 years ago, we did that. And the bid we got was $96,000, and I did $96,000 of work for $28,000. because I separated it into 2 years and stayed under the threshold. Same amount of trees, but we didn't have to go out to bid. Going out to bid, that price changes from when you negotiate with 3 different companies. It changes a lot.
Well, it's not to say that we have to go out to bid for all of these. We could break it up and say, this time we can, but I think what happens is now you become excluding. You're really only allowed to award if it's a necessity, right?
I'm sorry?
With the $17,500 limit,
Okay.
you can only do an award out of necessity, right? It's not a matter of I'm choosing to do an additional amount, but you're not allowed to bid on this or give me a quote because you've already reached your $17,500 limit from the borough for the year.
Well, if you're talking about an aggregate, so splitting contracts is not allowed by contract law, but an aggregate is a 12-month rolling period where you can't exceed a certain amount of money for any goods or services provided. In the past, we've used a state contract many times, and they've had a certain type of pricing. When we were looking into this last year, when we started the process and we asked council to authorize a bid, we had seen other towns who had gone out to bid in lieu of doing a state contract or quoting, and they'd gotten better prices per unit.
That's right.
Based on these things.
That's correct.
But we can't split contracts, so we can't go under a threshold this year just so that next year we can do it again. That's called splitting contracts, and it's if your project exceeds 17.5,
right,
it should go out to bid, which is what we were attempting to do. We obviously still have state contracts, so if the numbers from the bid come back and they exceed our cost estimates, they're over budget, or we can beat them on state contract, then we utilize that option. But when I had researched it last year with Denise, we had found other towns and we had provided specifications from those towns to our utilities and DPW to review, and they came in at better unit prices, and that was one of the biggest reasons we had suggested a full master list and going out for unit prices, because the guaranteed work lowered those prices rather than state contract doing smaller amounts in increments.
And I should have specified going out to bid, not state contract. I should have said that.
And in terms of the amount of trees have increased, it's because people had more than one tree. We only gave them enough permit for one tree. Well, if the rest of the sidewalk in front of their home and on the side of their house needed to be done, what's the sense of taking one tree down? So the permits were granted to take all of their 2 or 3 trees, and some have more than that. And if you look at their sidewalk, you know, it's upheaved. And it was in decline for many, many years, but now that sidewalk is no longer a ½ inch, it's up to 1 inch to 2 inches. So that's why that the list increased, because they already had a permit for one tree, but then they have multiple trees. Some only had one tree, but not all. So that's why the tree list had increased out of, you know, reviewing that a couple of years ago in 2015.
The other reason is that now they're including the utility line trees. They didn't when I had it. It was just trees out of the utility lines.
Right.
Now it has both on it, so that's why that number is big.
So when would we look to
So you
send
have,
this out?
the council has already authorized us to go out to bid. That has already been granted. I believe I did it last October or November. I asked for permission to do so. What needs to happen is the specifications need to be developed, so we need to write them. I do the boilerplate, and that's already prepared. It's just obviously needs dates and things to be input. So once the specifications are written, we would advertise it in the paper. Depending on our timeline, minimum is 10 days. So depending on where we are, we may advocate for a little bit longer to encourage more competition. And then we do an opening, and then after review and tabulation, it can come back to council. So really the next step in this is having the specifications completed, reviewed, and then put with the boilerplate so that I can advertise.
So we can help you with that, Rich?
Yeah, Ralph and John already have specifications from other towns that
Yes.
basically all we have to do is change the quantities, change the date, change the location.
Add in any
and-
other specific information.
Yeah,
we feel
a few
pertinent to our
specific
town.
things to Milltown.
So maybe we can get that done by next month, do you think?
That's what we're shooting for,
Yes.
yes. And just so you know, the law has changed. They had gave everyone time to get a CTE. You must have a full-time certified tree expert in all companies that we hire. So it's going to widen the choice of what we can do to get those estimates. People are really looking for work, now working on getting their certifications if they hadn't before. So it will be increased competition, thanks to the state of New Jersey.
Okay, anything else in regard to this matter? Okay, seeing nothing. Discussion of strategic long-range planning versus ongoing policy making.
So that's me also. It's sort of a follow-up to what we started talking about last meeting. We got into a long discussion towards the end of the meeting about priorities in the budget, planning for long-term things, capital plan, and I had advocated for a long-term plan, and I think there was some confusion about it. So I went to work the next day and went online and found a really good article that explains what strategic planning is, and I sent it to the full council, and I heard back from Councilman Revelinsky. But so I guess I put this on so that we could discuss, and I will share with the public once we talk about it, what I'm talking about, what the difference between a strategic plan and just doing an ongoing budget. But first, so I don't step on anyone's toes, I know this is Council President Dixon's area, so if you have any macro view that you'd like to discuss with us first, I would be happy to defer to you. The macro view of the planning for the town.
Well, any planning that we do should be involving, or whoever the new CFO is. We need the financial end of it. We have to know what's going on. We know what our need, we believe we know what our needs are. We have all our department heads that are put input into us. But finance is something that we're not on a daily basis. So I'm hoping when we get a new CFO, maybe we can sit down and address that with them.
So, and that was sort of where the disconnect came in, because strategic planning, and I'll just read you the definition, is the process whereby elected officials, that would be us, step back, examine the current situation of their jurisdiction, and then develop a vision of what they would like that jurisdiction to be like in 5, 10, or 15 years, based on forecasted needs and conditions. It's the ability to engage the citizens, key stakeholders, in a visioning process whereby the elected officials are able to determine what those parties would like their jurisdiction to be like in the future. It's the ability to define goals that for a county or city and objectives to achieve those goals. It is also the ability to periodically redirect and modify the plan as conditions warrant. Most important to achievement of the strategic plan is how, on an ongoing basis, the jurisdiction's resources can be deployed to achieve the plan's goals. So what I was talking about last time is we do a budget every year. It's sort of like when we all have in our household. You have your electric bill, your water bill, your mortgage and everything, but then you have your longer term big ticket items like a new roof or a new driveway or things like that. So we all have to do that. We have our everyday, weekly, yearly, monthly budget, but then we have our bigger items that we have to plan for, and you as a family have to prioritize. Gee, do we need the roof this year? And then of course if you get a leaky roof, that has to jump to the top of the list, but you do sort of have your tiered priorities, which I believe we had, and Lou, maybe you're familiar with this, we did have our prioritized capital improvement plan that we had, and ironically, you just gave us a brand new one tonight, because that was what brought up the discussion last time, was that we had long-range capital plans and how those needs shifted rather than the strategic plan driving it. It was depending on the whim of the council what got to the top. So ironically, I looked at it and I had brought up the water lines, right? So when I look at the one that we had from 2010 through 2030, the phased water main cleaning and lining, on here it said $1 million per year for about 10 years. Now I look at the one that you just gave me tonight, and it's $3 million per year over the next 10 years. So and my question to the council was, I believe there was some sort of plan for the water lines back earlier in the 2000s, And, you know, what happened to that plan? Why didn't we keep on track with that rather than go to a different priority? So I'm wondering if somebody could answer that question.
No, I think we have stayed on track. You know, being the chair of the Utility Commission, I think we've stayed on track with that plan. It's just we're aware of the impact of proceeding with that plan has on the residents. We did Main Street cleaning and lining, and on here you'll even see if I flip to the page for the water, and let's see. Lou, do you remember off the top of your head how much the
first page has
is the first page
completed or?
Oh, okay. So all the completed work, substation maintenance, $500,000. We've gotten rid of that by moving our substation up the hill.
Right.
Built the 2-transformer substation at Ford Avenue. No longer required. That was a cost of $7 million that we were able to avoid. New electric substation near Washington Avenue, up on the hill, $14 million. Henry Plaza 3-phase transformer, $75,000. That was completed. Brook Drive roadway improvement, $600,000. School Street retaining wall, $340,000. Eliminating the Washington Avenue pump station was $800,000, and mind you that as the pump stations get older and that dies, their sewage backs up. So that was a good move. Vanderbilt Avenue sewers, $365,000. West Lawrence, replace existing water main, $100,000. Home Depot tank painting for, let's see, that's a 750,000 gallon tank. Bids are going to be going out very soon. They're out now, and we're going to be getting that going in September. Radio telemetry system on the tank, $50,000. Main Street water main cleaning and lining. This was done back around 2006, 2007 was $1.4 million. I don't see on here the completed JFK cleaning and lining. We spent, what, $1 million on that?
1.5.
1.5. So over the past few years, we've completed a lot of the work on this list. The problem is,
I fully understand that. However,
as we move forward, the cost increases. What cost us $1 million 10 years ago? Well, apparently, Lou, I had a discussion with Mike before he came today, and he says, oh, by the way, remember how I said last meeting $10 million for eliminating the brown water? It's looking more like $30 million.
But that sort of goes to my question was, you just named all the one-time things that we did, and the point that I was making is have something every year in that plan. So that's the that's why we had the capital improvement, and you'll see they have little notches for every year to do something, not just a one-time, okay, we did that. Whew, now we can sit back and rest for a little while. Like to have something allocated every year in the plan to do, whether it be, you know, this line or the dead ends or the loops or things like of that nature.
But we have been. I mean, even this past year, we started working on, it's not Townsend, up there off of Washington Avenue, phases 1, 2, and 3 for the stormwater to eliminate all the flooding. Wilson Avenue to eliminate the flooding there. But, you know, we have to be mindful of the impact these have on residents. I mean, last council meeting when we voted on the budget, Councilman Farkas, you made the comment about the way we spend money and keeping an eye on our debt service. Well, you can't do money without going into debt service unless you jack up the taxes on residents trifold in order to pay for improvements. I mean, when you look at $3 million a year to do work to eliminate brown water over the next 10 years, $3 million, I looked on the Infrastructure Trust Bank, comes to, and I wrote it down, I think it's $350,000 a year in debt service if you were to pay that back over 10 years.
Right. So we get back to capital projects instead of...
I'm just saying that adding just $3 million alone each year adds another $300,000 in debt service every year.
But so here's the question.
That compounds on the residents. You can't do it all at once.
Here's the question for the planning going back several years. Or I would advocate for a strategic plan where we involved the public and any key stakeholders, and they said, and we had said, you know, what are your top priorities for the borough of Milltown? Is it clean water? Is it safe roadways? Is it the police force? You know, is crime an issue? Get the input from the public about what their main issues were. So my pitch is that, you know, we should be doing this ongoing, have a strategic plan, and have the strategic planning committee, which other towns obviously do. They get together, they have a long-range goal of here's what we want to see. But, you know, as we talked about last time, depending on who's on the council, different priorities get bumped up to the top, which was one of the things that we discussed on how it's decided that one project gets moved up ahead of others without public input. So that's where you have to decide where your resources are going to go because of what the town and the majority of the people feel are the main priorities of the borough.
I don't understand.
So basically I said, well, the reason the discussion came up is when we were just talking about the debt service, that we have a heavy debt service that's going to be starting next year, and then it makes it harder to do other projects when you already have a huge debt service. So what was where was the decision making on here's the 4 or 5 really big things that we have, which one is going to go to the very top and we're going to bond for? How did that decision come about?
Well, also keep in mind, our engineering department applies for grants, and there's much more grants coming forward through the state. I finally got the information from how to get in there into the system. There were some difficulties. They updated the system, so it's a little bit more challenging. So with the Wilson Avenue project, we applied for grants for that. For Tracy Drive and Desmet, we were denied on that particular grant. So we are trying to put forth an effort to try and reach out to the state or federal grants before squashing anything. And then we have to plan accordingly, you know, to go forward. We definitely need a CFO in here to assist us with that decision. The committee can work on it, but you also have to talk to department heads. They know what they've received, they know what they need, and that would be the first step. And also, once the website's updated, we're going to have more communication because not everybody can come to the council meetings. Some people don't want to email. That's fine. That's their preference. Some people don't want to mail letters. The website will increase the communications going forward once it is completed.
I would say that we get a lot of communication now, but we don't answer the communication from the public.
Well, I don't want to sit here at an agenda meeting and try to go through planning right now because
that
not, should be taken
okay,
for the
so I guess
finance committee to decide some things and then bring it to us and then create a public meeting.
Ironically, Dorian, I did speak to the CFO and I asked her how many grants we've gotten over the last several years, and that amount is extremely low. I mean, so we can't, I don't think we can count on getting grants from the state for a lot of this
No, quite frankly, it doesn't apply to us because even when we looked for one for lead service lines, they said, well, sorry, you guys are above average income for the town. It exceeds the average income of the county, so you're out of luck.
I mean, it's not up to the CFO to do the job of the elected official that need to steer in the direction that the CFO would then have to go to get that funding in place.
Well, we talked to, as we're in the course here of replacing our CFO, we've heard from several candidates, and those candidates say, I keep the money to make sure that the elected officials can't muddle it up, and to make sure the department heads can't muddle it up, and we stay on track with the plan. And I think that's what we need to really focus on, is trying to tighten down, as we said at the last minute, is tighten down the budgets and make sure there's no frivolous spending, but to also be prepared for some of these little hiccups that come along the way, whether it's police cameras or radios that break or whatever it may be, but maintain the plan and not just kind of jump because of one reason or another. And unfortunately, that's been, and I agree with you, I think that when our finance meetings occur, we have to discuss
the budget,
planning, but, well, it's more than the budget, it's planning for our future. But, you know, when previous administrations hadn't done it, and I'm not going to, you know, cast stones on anyone that's come up here and volunteered, but when we've had things like our DPW facility moving out of the floodplain, and it hasn't been done, now, unfortunately, that becomes top priority because it was the priority 20 years ago, And we kept kicking it down the road. And if we had done it 20 years ago and bitten the bullet then, we'd probably be doing a lot more of the water main cleaning and lining and be so much further down the path. So I agree, we have to put it in the plan. I know it's been discussed last year and what we have to do moving forward. And Lou, this is probably the third or fourth time I've gotten the updated plan from you guys on, well, you know, we're looking at it. We've got Ford Avenue going in. We've got a force main for anywhere between $5 million and $10 million to go in. So these are all the things that are necessities we need to plan for.
That brings us right back to the conversation last week that I started, because I said I would prefer to spend on quality of life issues for the town, whether it be water or, you know, nobody's going to want to have to flush their toilet and nothing goes down, you know. So the law, I would advocate then, Mayor, that maybe we could play with the idea of having a strategic planning committee, or at least try to have something where we get input from the public and the stakeholders to say what their priorities are for the main issues in the town.
Yes.
And look at our town, what would we like it to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years?
Right, I agree 100%.
And I would volunteer to, you know, get that started, because I actually was in charge of the strategic planning on the Board of Education.
Okay. Right now, you're already a member of a body, of a committee that is charged with exactly that, and it's called the Finance, Administration, and Planning Committee. Finance, it's already tied in. I think the councilman was talking about CFOs. Council President Dixon talked about the importance of the CFO. That's finance. Administration, dealing with the administration of the borough, and planning, and that's the main word right there. So we already have that in place. I would suggest that that committee get together, solicit ideas from the residents, and put together on paper a plan of where the town wants to be in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's very simple. It's just a matter of sitting down and doing the work. And unfortunately, the complexion of the council changes so often. A lot of times these things get lost, and they have in the past. But if it's something that is created and it's put out publicly and the council's toes are held to the fire, I think it would serve the residents very well. And I would ask Council President Dixon and yourself and Councilman Revelinsky to make that a priority, and we can move forward.
Very good.
Thank you.
Anyone else on that?
No.
I think, just to be clear, I think we're all on the same page here.
Yeah, we are.
It's just a matter of like, okay, are we, you know, taking those steps?
Okay, next, Milltown water update.
That's me. So the reason I put this on is because over the past few weeks we've had more than a handful of residents posting pictures on social media showing their brown water. And brown water, tonight we've got with us our utility director, John Eckert. We've got CME Associates, our municipal engineer. And we also have John Manganiero from WRM Associates, our licensed water operator. First and foremost, I've tried to address as many of these comments and concerns via Facebook, which is where a lot of these were posted. But to be quite honest, folks, we need to have better communication with the borough. And the reason I say that is because the borough needs to know what's going on. The reason I reached out to people isn't just to try and calm the waters, but to also get information, and that information be put into our capital improvements plan to say what areas are bad. Now, there's some people off of Blueberry Drive. Never knew there was a problem over there, and suddenly a lot of people have discolored water. So that information and communicating with the borough and using the proper channels, like I know you want to vent, and it's actually good it was out there because it got a lot of people talking and saying, hey, I've got an issue too. You're not alone, but there are certain steps that can be taken to try and abate the issue within your home, and if that doesn't work, then obviously we need to address it further at the borough. So the first thing I want to do is, I asked CME to prepare this, and Russ, I don't know if you're going to be able to zoom in on these sorts of things. just, I'll hold it right here. You just zoom on in. So what you can see in front of you here is our updated map.
Excuse me, why don't you go around
Go
in the
around,
front,
go around.
so this way the folks in here can see it, and it's a better shot for him. Make sure you speak into the microphone, please.
You can make me stand on it.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, it's easy for you. Microphone.
Oh, was that we all right?
That's like
All right.
Nielsen.
So, what you see here is exactly what we were just talking about. Back in around 2005 or 2006, we did the cleaning and lining of Main Street water main from one end of town all the way to the other. We also did some areas over here, and I think that's Patain and, Hague and Foch. The spots in red is the cleaning and lining that was just done last year. Now what cleaning and lining does is, you have a good before and after picture here, is over the years you've had ductile iron pipes and cast iron pipes which are uncoated on the inside. They don't have concrete in them. And what the concrete does is it works as a buffer so that you don't get rust buildup, right? Rust is nothing more than oxidized iron. It occurs when water touches it. There's always a little bit of entrained air in the water. Ipso facto, you get rust. But what happens is it starts to choke out your mains. And like you can see here, if everyone can see it at home, and you can Google this, there's tons of videos online, it starts to choke it out. And when it chokes it out, you build up higher pressure, the water moves a little bit faster, it starts to scour it out. So you clean and line it by opening up a pit, you send a machine through, and you scrape it out, you squeegee it, and then you spray it with cement. So in the end, it looks like a brand new pipe. It's great. The only thing it doesn't do is provide additional structural integrity. So one of the key aspects before you do a cleaning and lining project is to make sure that the pipes are in good enough condition that even though now we've spent all the money to clean them, they're not just going to break. In certain areas of town, it's worse than others. Like, so for example, Main Street was old. It's a main line, you want to clean it, right? Because anyone coming off of that would get brown or discolored water. But as you enter a cul-de-sac, because there's very low flow, any brown or rust that gets dissolved in the water winds up kind of collecting there. So the cul-de-sacs are always the first problem. Also, when you get a change in flow from one end to the other, which happened about 2 weeks ago, we found out after the fact that New Brunswick shut their water treatment plant off. The water's coming in from this end of town, suddenly that stops. Water then starts draining from our tank as demand increases from the residents. So you start flowing everything backwards. And when you do that, you start to loosen up the things inside the pipe, all that little bit of rust accumulation. I think part of the cause is also at the fact that this is the time of year we do hydrant flushing. I know a Nixle alert went out about it, and currently I have another map, which Ron, if you wouldn't mind handing me. I rolled it up, folks, so if you bear with me for a moment while I try and hold it out. It's the same map, Milltown, one end to the other. This is the status of our current...
Make sure it's not upside down, right?
Current hydrant flushing. So the areas that are highlighted in blue, orange, and yellow are trying to keep track of how much progress we make on a given day. What's that? It's the same. I'm sorry. So the first thing you got to do is you got to clean your lines out. It gets here, you flush out this area. You got a hill along Washington, you're flushing that way, down and out, down and out. You're getting all the dead ends free and clear. So the areas that aren't highlighted over here, which is Pardon Avenue to Ford Avenue, and then on the west side of Main Street from West Lakewood all the way to the Turnpike, and let's not forget our folks over on Miller's Lane as well. That hasn't been done yet. Part of that is because we have very limited forces to do this. You don't want to do it in the middle of the night, or I'm sorry, you don't want to do it in the middle of the day. You want to do it at night when everyone's sleeping and people aren't noticing the decreased water pressure and anything that may stir up in the lines. So it's a good idea to pay attention to the notices, because in the morning when you turn your water on, if it's brown, you don't want to throw in a load of laundry or take a shower. Now when it comes to brown water in your home, whether it's after flushing or on any occurrence, there's a lot of things that a resident can do to try and quell this information, or this situation, and make sure that it's truly an issue from the main to the home. And the first thing you want to do is run your cold water. at about 2 gallons per minute out of the average faucet, run the faucet in the lowest point of your home, maybe in a slop sink in the basement or near your washing machine, whatever it may be. Maybe your spigot if you're a slab-on-grade home, your spigot outside. Run that water. If it comes clean as cold water, you're good to go. Then you want to run your hot water. If the hot water is cloudy, at that point you want to go down to your basement and drain your water tank. And you don't have to drain the whole thing, just drain it until it's clear. Now, if you haven't drained your water tank in several years, it's like changing the oil in your car. It's going to be black, it's going to be mud, it's going to be nasty brown. But if you drain it, just like you change your oil every 3,000 miles, it's not so bad. It also helps increase the longevity of your hot water heater.
Hey, Rich, if I might add, we had this comment, I think, a year or so ago. You're supposed to exercise your hot water tank monthly. Most people have never done it since it was put in 20 years ago.
So the other thing is, if that doesn't solve your problem, by all means notify the borough. Right? We want to know where these are occurring, because your neighbor may have the problem or your neighbor may not have the problem. So if you talk to your neighbor and you find out, hey, is your water brown? Is it nasty like mine was this morning? It was an iced tea or an IPA in my cup? And they say no. Well, then you need to start thinking, was it the service to my house? Again, when we go back to the lead service issue, this is the line that goes from the main in the street to your home. You are responsible for that. And I've spoken to a couple residents around town who have replaced their services when they first moved in, or they've noticed some decreased pressure, and their brown water issues have gone away. Now, I know a lot of the people on Facebook were commenting from a block away from me, 2 blocks away from me. And I know I shouldn't stand up here and say this, but I didn't have a problem. I did have a problem in the past. We had a couple of times where we were drawing water out of the tank, or we had to lower it because you want to keep the water changing in elevation in the tank so it doesn't get stagnant. I might get a little brown water, but I'd drain my water tank, I'd run the cold water, make sure the lines were clean, and I haven't had an issue. So a lot of it is just like your car. You know, while the borough might have a pothole in the road, it's still your responsibility to maintain your vehicle, just like it is to maintain your home. So we want to know what's going on. We want to know where the complaints are, because even if it is your home and you're able to flush it out, but you're doing it more often than everyone else, or maybe you've got a filter there, we want to know, because this is the area that the water's traveling, you're getting brown water issues, and we need to add it to our list of improvements. But if you don't notify the borough and it's simply out on social media, it doesn't help us identify where the problems are. It doesn't help us determine what the next step or course of action that we should take. So that's it from me. I'm going to open it up to anyone's comments. We do have our licensed water operator here, John Manginero. We also have our utilities director here, John Eckert, and CME Associates, if you guys have any more technical questions you want to ask about anything recently, etc. So I'm going to turn this around.
I think it will be nice when we get the new website, which is coming when? Soon, I hope?
We are working on it. I have a project manager now who we are starting to work on our timeline.
To have a tracking on there, because right now, if someone does email the utility department, they don't know that their neighbors do or don't have it unless they get some sort of response from the borough.
Yeah, if the neighbors have notified us whether or not they have an issue. That's the biggest problem is the communication. If no one's calling us, we can't respond. John can't go out and talk to some residents on the street or say, hey, you know, I know we have an issue here, something happened last week, or someone else, you know, had a similar complaint only a block away, so let me see what's going on. And it's that type of scenario that when we get these complaints leads us to calling New Brunswick, because they don't call us when something happens, calling them and saying, hey, did you guys change anything last week? Did anything occur? Oh, no, not at all. I mean, we shut down our plant for an hour. Right. That's a change that affects us in Milltown as a downstream end user.
Oh, so it's been nice to get the last week or so to get the Nixle alert, because that sort of gives you a heads up that there might be something in your area.
Yeah,
but I think the problem was that some people called and got incorrect information. So that, you know, when somebody called and they were told that it was from New Brunswick, then that leads to the further, you know, spread of misinformation around
I'll tell you, the biggest problem that I think we face in our utility department is that it's understaffed.
No, this was somebody called and the police dispatcher told them.
I understand, but the problem is that we're understaffed. We've got a superintendent who, God bless him, works his butt off with a shovel in his hand and a keyboard in the other hand at times, trying to make sure everything's running smoothly and we're addressing the residents' concerns. But we've got 5 guys, including our superintendent, who operate a water, a sewer, and an electric department. We share services with one person to handle the phone calls for the construction department, the utility department, as well as the zoning and code enforcement. So we do a lot with very little down here, but when it comes to issues like this, it's clear that we need additional manpower, because with all the information that I've even been able to gather, we still need to sit down with John when he gets a moment and can come up for air to go over it and say, yep, this is an area, and let's not forget about this over here. Relay that over to CME and say, is this part of the capital improvements plan, or if we do this neighborhood over here, can we get this one done at the same time? As well as discuss all this amongst council and the utility committee.
As well as put something up on the new website, we're aware of brown water in such and such a neighborhood, we are addressing the issue. So that then 10 other neighbors don't have to call, they can see that, oh yeah, oh, by the way.
But it's good that the neighbors do call.
Yeah.
We want you to call. And if you don't get through, you can always send an email to the borough, whether you send it to myself, whether you send it to John, or drop it off the clerk. Gabrielle, do we have like a utilities at milltownborough.com that we don't even have like someone who would check a regular independent box?
No, there's not a general email box that's specific to. There is a directory on our website though with all of the members of our staff and their email addresses and their extensions.
So you want to reach out and actually get a hold of people and leave the message. You know, just because someone didn't get back to you doesn't mean we're not addressing it or we're not concerned. But it's a lot of times we're busy addressing the issue at hand while the event's occurring. So one other thing I'd like to comment, and again, the floor's open to folks if they want to come up and ask questions, at least for a short while, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to take up too much. I mean,
yeah, we do have. What we'll do is we'll cover that under audience comments. We'll finish this, let engineering wrap up, and then if folks have any concerns or questions, and perhaps Lou will be touching on some things that might answer their questions.
The other thing is, if you see someone digging in the street, just keep in mind it's not always the borough. I know one of the comments that was posted last week was, well, they were digging in my street, and after chasing John down when he was flushing hydrants and doing things with our licensed water operator and everything else, we found out that it was actually a private contractor who had been issued a permit to go down, to excavate, to fix someone's water service, and leave. So by the time we realized what people were even talking about, because it wasn't borough employees, the work was done and it was gone. So I think it's another thing we would like to propose, is that anyone pulling a permit in town, if there is active work, the day that they come to work, they would have to notify us, and we could either, I don't know if I want to bombard people with Nixle alerts, simply because it becomes the boy who cried wolf, you know, especially if it's across town. But if you see a truck in the middle of the road, and again, when the website's up there, go, oh, it says right now Jim Jones Contracting is working over on Highland. That must be what it is. So with that, I'm about wrapped up. I'm going to let everyone else speak. I've had my fair share.
Okay. Any questions for the councilman?
Yes. Not for the councilman. And I think everybody's heard that councilman speak quite enough right now. I have a question for our Director of Utilities and our water operator. Just to clarify something. I couldn't see Rich's presentation, but we're not getting brown water from New Brunswick, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The reason we're trying to maybe put some of this blame on New Brunswick is they disrupted our flow.
I should say, under normal static operating conditions, you're not getting brown water from New Brunswick. If there's an interruption in service, that causes issues. We lose power at Elkins Lane. That causes issues. You open up hydrants for flushing. It's going to be causing issues. It's not static anymore. So there's going to be reverse flow. And yes, there's things that we can do. And one of the things that I think is so important that Councilman Revelinsky pointed out is the communication aspect of it. We talked about it in the office the other day. When people post on Facebook, it's very non-specific. You can't address non-specific. You send an email, so-and-so, I live at this address, and I have this problem. That can be documented. We get a history of that. We can see trends that's going on in that area. Because of that trend, is there a closed valve, partially closed valve? Is there something else that we need to be looking at? But when we don't have the information to be able to go to that area, it creates a problem. New Jersey last year passed the Water Accountability Act, which requires every 2 years, every valve 12 inches or more to be operated. Under 12 inches, every 4 years those valves have to be operated. Everything needs to be located. So if we start operating the valves and we see we've got, because of, there's been main breaks over the years and you isolate areas to stop the water flowing, inadvertently, some of those valves may not ever get opened again. So the Water Accountability Act forces water systems to go operate those valves and make sure that they're open in the correct position. One of the other things that Councilman Revelinsky said was we need personnel. This is a very labor-intensive act that the legislature passed. There's many more aspects. Some of the engineer can do. Some of it's GPS location of aspects of the water system, valves, hydrants, T's, crosses, your infrastructure that you have in the ground. But the actual going and operating, cleaning out the valve boxes and that, it's very labor intensive. Because of doing it, you're going to come up with some breaks. You have an old system.
Okay. Now, most of the problems with the brown water happened before we started flushing the hydrants. Can either one of you address specifically why a good portion of town had brown water and some areas were perfectly fine? Can either one of you answer that question?
So what happens is the water system isn't just a series of one pipe that goes around Milltown. It's like a grid like this. So every time we flush something, we're changing the direction that the water would normally flow. So if you saw Rich's pictures of the insides of those pipes and how they're just full of all kinds of stuff sticking out, they call it tuberculation, it's mineral deposits. All that iron oxide sits in there. And when the water's flowing in one direction, the stuff on the opposite side of the flow doesn't get disturbed. But now, when you change the direction of the water, now it's coming the other way, and it's dislodging a whole bunch of stuff that normally wouldn't have been disturbed with the normal flow.
And what causes that?
So this is why this is very
direction to
unpredictable with the brown water. And like we could be flushing in one area of town, the other area is affected. It happens all the time.
But this happened before the flushing,
Well,
so.
I think what they're asking to, John, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I just think I know what you guys are getting at here, is that it's the time of year when flushing is to be done. And the reason that we do it twice a year is because even though you flushed last year or you flushed in November, December, it builds up again.
I'm not even talking about flushing. I'm talking, this happened before flushing.
I understand, but this all happened, most of these occurrences occurred within the last 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, right before flushing.
Right, and
so
again, it's basically you're saying the flow changed. What caused the flow to change?
It doesn't mean it's not just flow change. Water is a little bit warmer.
That's what
We
he's
we
asking.
draw from the canal, right? That's where New Brunswick gets its water from. So that groundwater is warmer, which means the iron oxide becomes more soluble, which means that as it goes through the pipes, a lot more of it stays there instead of just being pushed downstream. If we have to lower the water in the tank over at Home Depot simply because we haven't been drawing from that tank and you don't want it to get stale, it starts to go down, it changes the flow. Elkins Lane Pump Station, which is typically the first complaint that we heard, which was May.
I appreciate
May
it,
15th
Councilman, I appreciate it, but I
was-
want to hear from our professionals. I've heard enough from you. I want to hear from our professionals. I want them to answer my questions, not you.
Okay.
Well, he's correct, though.
I'm not saying he's incorrect, but I want to hear from you guys.
And like I said, when the system's not static, so you lose power at Elkins Lane, you lost power at Elkins Lane.
That's correct.
You have disruption from New Brunswick, from the treatment process, the system's not static anymore.
You just answered my question. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm wondering why it's not town-wide instead of just specific areas. That's my goal here.
It's gonna hit the major trunk areas first. So if it's creating any kind of movement in that pipe, if there's any kind of movement, because I wouldn't say water hammer, but an oscillation in the pipe, it's going to be in the main lines more. But if there's some smaller lines off of that, they're going to be affected as well.
I think I could answer this a little easier with a visual thing. If you picture yourself on a sunny day in an open field, and there's clouds up in the sky, you see those shadows moving across the field. And what happens is those shadows are the discolored water. And they might not affect anybody unless they open up their faucet. So that's why some of these things go right by one house, but then the neighbor's affected because the neighbor wasn't using the water when the cloud was passing through the area. So depending on who's using water, what the velocity of it is, it's really complicated. The cloud disperses in different ways depending on the path of least resistance for the water. So it's like the chaos theory in a way. When a slug of dirty water is released into the system, you basically can't predict where it's going to go or whose pipe it's going to get sucked into. There's just so many variables involved with that.
And one of your big problems, which was pointed out earlier, is that you have a lot of cast iron unlined pipe. And you get that oxidation. So that's inherent with just the type of system that you have. So doing lining, main replacements, all that's proactive, costs a lot of money. So frequent flushing, I was at a previous public meeting here, and people don't want to hear about putting any additives in the water, but there are a few additives that you could use a product like Clenphos 300 or 400 to help keep that out, and it keeps the particulates out of solution.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
And that is something that would have to be permitted through DEP and application process, and your engineer would handle that kind of thing.
And to add on to the whole, like the flushing issue, it's really everyone in our business calls it a necessary evil because you have to flush to clean out your pipes twice a year, but it wreaks havoc on everybody. And that's why we start at 11 p.m. We're hoping most of the residents are sleeping when we do it. But there are night owls out there, and those people are disturbed by the discolored water, But to give you an idea, we will have a guy out tonight at 11 o'clock. He's going to go through almost 500,000 gallons of water tonight flushing. That's how much water it takes. This flushing cycle, we're taking probably 40% longer than other ones just due to the amount of complaints we have. We're running a lot more water, we're running a little bit higher pressure, and all said and done, we're going to go through 5 million gallons of water. It's enough to fill up this room probably 10 times. And that's at a cost. That's not free water, and it's simply being dumped into the storm drains. You know, so this is why we don't flush more than twice a year. It's a very costly thing to do, both in water and manpower at night. So, you know, we're obligated to do it twice a year. We do it twice a year. We're doing it now. And I am absolutely convinced that since it was the absolute end of the cycle when we had these disturbances, this is why it was worse. The pipes were loaded because we were just about to flush them, and all this stuff happened before we got a chance to do it. So, you know, these are the best answers I give you. We try so hard to keep the water clean, but, you know, look at the date of the town, 1896. There's some really, really old stuff out there. And the council works very hard. Every person up here should have a little plaque that says, "I'm for progress," because every one of these people up here works tirelessly to help us fix these problems, to come up with money for me to spend so I could fix the problems. And they don't always agree on what the major priority is, but they always agree that we always have to make progress. So we're trying.
One of the other things is you had an extremely bad winter with your water system. You had a 2 or 3 week period where I think John told me you had 11 or 13 main breaks.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot of turning of valves. That's a lot of stuff getting disturbed and breaking loose, and, you know, reason why there's going to be some particulates in the water. Not that we want it, and after every main break, weather permitting, you flush as much as you can. But if it's freezing out, which most of the time it is, you can't flush the way that you would really like to.
Any other questions from the council?
Sir, I didn't get your name or your title.
Oh, I'm John Manganero. I'm the licensed water operator for Milltown. I work for Water Resource Management, and I've done this
Thank you.
For many years.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. Thank you, gentlemen. Again, we're going to have the questions from the audience after we go through engineering items, because there might be some things that Lou can shed light on. I don't know what he has, but Lou?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I have a few things, and I'll be brief. As noted earlier, the water tank rehabilitation project has been advertised for bids. I just want to note that the bids are going to be received on July 24th at 10 a.m. And that project includes the painting of the interior and exterior of the tank. And we anticipate doing that work in September after the weather has cooled and the peak demands on the water system are lessened. I also want to note the Public Works and Firehouse project is underway across the street. The contractor is mobilized. He's begun site clearing. He's been removing asphalt pavement, and he should start the excavation of the site this week. He's also submitting a lot of shop drawings and submittals to our office that we're reviewing as quickly as we can to keep the project moving. Lastly, with regard to the capital projects sheets that I handed out before the meeting, basically what we've done is we've taken the previous capital projects plan, we've identified the projects that were completed, and we've refreshed some of the numbers in here, updated them, and this is basically a tool. It's a tool for the council to use. We anticipate that you would get input from your department heads to start adding to this list or adjusting this list so you can develop this capital projects plan for whatever period you choose necessary. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for the engineer?
Lou, any way to get this electronically?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll close engineering items. Audience comments, please state your name and address for the record in the microphone in the center of the room. I will open audience comments. Yes, sir?
Steve Gregus, 25 Lincoln Avenue. Just a quick comment regarding the tree issue in town. When I was on the Shade Tree Commission, a couple of times we had thrown out the idea of the feasibility of having a tree crew in town. Maybe it would involve hiring maybe 1 or 2 guys who are experienced in tree removal, you know, and then maybe take a couple of existing guys that we have and just have strictly a tree crew. Just like we have a sanitation crew, you just send them out, and believe me, there would be plenty of work for them to do every day. I mean, between removal, pruning, stump grinding, even tree planting. I know it may be a little of an investment in the beginning, but when you look at how much money we're spending on tree removal, especially for some of these big trees, if you have a crew out there every day doing stuff, it might be worth looking into the feasibility as far as cost-wise, you know, to have, you know, a crew. And again, maybe hiring 1 or 2 guys. We have a chipper. We have most of the equipment. Maybe invest in a stump grinder. And it may be worth doing because there is a ton of tree work. I mean, I was on a commission for 18 years, and in that 18 years, we were never able to catch up on the tree maintenance because, you know, there wasn't enough money in the budget to cover everything. So it may be something to look into in the future. And just one other comment regarding the water. One thing I'd recommend borough residents to do, and I did this in my house many years ago, is installing a water filter on the main line coming into the house right after the shutoff valve. I tell you, the amount of stuff, I mean, when I first put it in, I could go 2-3 months changing the filter. Lately, I've been changing it once a month. When stuff is going on, like the flushing, sometimes I'll change that every 3 to 4 days. I remember one time I kind of forgot about it. I actually stopped the flow of water in my house. I went to turn on water and it stopped. That's how clogged it got. So I think I paid $100 for it. I installed it myself. So it's definitely, you know, if you hired a plumber to do it, maybe a couple $100. But I think it's definitely worth the investment. And this way you can kind of keep track of what's going on, because it will save your hot water heater, your boiler if you have a hot water system, your shower valves, your valve body for your shower. I mean, it's definitely worth it, so something to think about. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Councilman and Mayor. Hey, first of all, I want to thank you guys.
Sorry, can you just repeat your name and address? I didn't catch
Scott
it.
Sabo, 250 South Main Street.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the members and the mayor. I think you guys do an incredible job running this town. I don't know how many people come here and thank you guys for your time and service. So I love this town. I think you guys do a great job. I'm an energy consultant. That's what I've been doing the past 5 years, and I'm a system design engineer for solar, from large-scale projects, from megawatts down to small residential systems. And there was just a new bill passed down in Trenton, the energy bill. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, what's going on. But the last 10 years, we've had non-existent energy increases here in the state. And the reason being is because natural gas collapsed. 2008, right, $15 per million BTU. 2015, $2.50. So the utility companies down in Trenton, nothing's been approved at the BPU for increases. That's all going to be changing soon, especially with the new bill that just passed. What does that mean? Well, Milltown, I mean, we're in the business of electricity. We're our own utility company here, right? So if our costs, the analysis that I see happening is in the next decade, which Councilwoman Trina
Mayor, yes.
just brought up about having the vision to look out like 10 years. You guys solve problems today and for tomorrow and the next couple of years, but having the vision to look out 10 years, right? I mean, the way that the bill was just passed, 50% of the generation has to come from renewable now. That means, well, they're going to have to either scale down the gas plants or take the nuclear plants offline, which they were supposed to do, which PSC&G just got a break and just bought some time right now. So, basically, and historically, if we look back since 1960, we go back 60 years, almost 60 years, 58, right? Electricity rates double every 20 years. Well, the last 10, we've had none. So we could be looking at a 100% increase in the next decade. That's scary. You're talking about possibly Milltown residents getting billed at almost double the rate now in the next 10 years. Imagine that. That's a big number. You can't let that happen. You definitely want to look into solar. Okay, I can certainly donate my time from a non-biased perspective for the town. I live here. I love this town. All right, I'm willing to donate any services that I can do for the mayor and the council members. But if you don't act, I mean, you got the beautiful new building going up, you have parking lots, roofs, you guys could utilize. Imagine, just think of this for 1 second. Imagine the town generating its own electricity and not having to pay for it. Wow. What could you guys do with that money? Councilwoman Trina, again, people wouldn't have to be waiting 7 years to get their trees trimmed. It's all about money and making the town more profitable so you can spend more money and make more improvements to the town, whether it's the water lines, trees, whatever it may be. So it's something that you need to start looking at soon because those increases are coming for sure. It's a mathematical certainty. And if history repeats itself, I say 50% in 10 years, which is still a big number. That's a big number. But what if it is 100%? What if it's more? What if there's a disruption in natural gas pipelines in this country? Can't have that. That's scary. You're laughing. I'm laughing too, but just imagine this town would be a ghost town. Clint Eastwood could come here and film another movie. Yeah, seriously. I mean, you can't, double rates or even worse than that. It's scary to me. So if there's any way I could help, I'll drop off my business cards at the town secretary here, and I'd love to do any. I looked at the numbers. The numbers are staggering. How much more money the town can have to spend. So, any questions for me?
No, I would say to drop us all a line and leave your card over there so we can figure this out, because I know. Solar has been one of the issues as well for residents. Our electric rates, a lot of people think that our electric rates are through the roof too, but we finance some of our taxes and surplus it with it. So it's something we need to look into.
Great.
So, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Phil Zambrana, 40 Van Loo. Just want to talk about trees for a minute. Is this master list, does it have a tree trimming side and a removal side, or is it just all mixed up?
It's one big list, and the reason what they did is we took all the requests that were submitted by residents, and I didn't take this, I think actually Councilman Legati did when he had the department, he's not listening, but when he had the department 2 years ago, I know he went around and looked at them all, and then Dorian started doing it, and I said, well, I know trees is a big issue for John getting his crew out there, so I said, let's share the list and start walking and figure out what we got to do to get this taken care of. But a lot of it is people submitted a permit. Some of it says trim it, but now you go out there and you go, man, this thing's so overgrown, you can't trim it because they've been on the list for 10, 15 years.
So is the list being filtered, and is it being assigned a tier, like, tier 3 the worst, tier 2, perhaps tier 1 last?
The original intent, and something I had thought of was, you say, look, if it's a raised sidewalk, give it 4 points automatically off the bat. And then a point for every inch it's raised. And then the higher the point value, that becomes your highest priority. So, unfortunately, doing that type of work and developing a plan to that extent is even more extensive. So I think what we're doing here is this is a list that everyone has looked at in the past in some form or fashion over the last 2-3 years, and is go around, figure it out, and then we're going to leave it to, depending on where the numbers come in, what we can afford to take down, and what John or Ralph say is, hey, make sure this one's a priority because at this point it's completely dead.
So you really can't tell at this point what are the trees that just have to be trimmed that are in lines?
No, you can tell by looking at them. So the problem is if the tree is split 50%, on the property, and 50% is hanging over the street, and the lines are running right through, and it's primaries and secondaries, meaning if it takes out the primaries, the whole block's out as opposed to just a couple of houses to the next pole. That becomes a bigger concern.
So you do have a number of how many trees can be trimmed, ballparkish, sort of.
No, I'm not.
80 trees, 150 trees.
That is where we take this information, we find out how much comes in, because the fact of the matter is, you're looking at a recurring cost. If you say this year, look, out of these trees, I can go back and I can trim 50 of them, not a problem. Well, that's 50 trees next year we have to trim again. And 50 trees the year after that, and 50 trees the year after that. And eventually, the one half becomes so big that they're right on your house. So you don't want to get into that situation. We've run this list already primarily through our DPW and our utility department.
Okay.
If it's a minor tree, and a lot of these say, and I won't name names of employees, but if so-and-so says it's not an issue, okay, let's look at it. And that note might be there from 3 years ago, where I saw one, I looked at it and I said, you know what? Wind blows the wrong way, this guy's losing his power, the other house is losing his power, and I see his gas line going right underneath it. So maybe we should keep this one on there.
So where I'm getting at with this, and my apologies for taking such a long time to get to the point. So you do have the PSE&G money, which you've had for almost a year. And this is one of the things on Exhibit A that you could use, okay, specifically for tree trimming. I'm not talking about stump removal, I'm not talking about, you know, that kind of thing, but you've had it for a year. And you've got to actually report on it, because you have to report on it annually what you did with the money. So as I said 2 or 3 meetings ago, you spent about 130, you've got about 340 left, give or take. I'm not really sure with my math, but if you take the list and you sort of start to, you know, make a little whack at it a little bit at a time, you've got the money and you've had it for a year. So that's that. Concerning water, so I got this Nixle on Thursday of last week, and it said that there was a small water leak on West Foch. We'll get to it on Monday. So I don't live on West Foch. I don't know if anybody from West Foch called or came down to the borough or said anything, but clearly if I lived on West Foch and you would have sent me a Nixle like that, I would have been at somebody's front door that day. I don't know how big this was, so I went down to West Foch and I looked at it. And the water's coming up out of the ground. Clearly, it's coming up from somewhere. Clearly, there had been a nice square that had been excavated and tarred over, but the water was still coming out. What happened between Thursday and Monday? Like, what was the thought process behind that?
I'll let our utility director, John, answer this one, but I will say, we mentioned it a little bit earlier about staffing being very, very tight around town.
Right.
So, John, if you want to give an explanation of the things that were occurring between that and then, and some of the limitations you're having, because I think it's important for the residents to hear from you how you operate the system with the number of staff that you have.
All right, so essentially on West Foch, coal was reported in, there was water coming out of the street.
Clearly.
We don't have x-ray vision to really see where the water is coming from. So we made a preliminary assessment. We figured the water was coming out of a house service. The borough doesn't fix people's house services. We never did, and you know, that's the way it is. The homeowner maintains their pipe all the way from the water meter out to the main in the middle of the street. So where this particular leak was, it looked like it was a house service. But we go through great pains to investigate and do what we could do so that I will never go up to a homeowner and say, you gotta hire a plumber and dig up your front yard and fix this pipe unless I am 150% sure it is their pipe. So in this particular case, that water actually stopped for a couple of days. So that made the job go a little bit longer. Some of these leaks, they have to get worse so we could figure out where the water's coming from. Like I said, we have listeners that can pick up anything. They could pick up sounds from the sewer system, they could pick up water leaks, and in this area, there was a whole bunch of piping. It was very difficult to ascertain where this leak was. So on Friday, we decided we're gonna bite the bullet and dig up the road and see if we could physically see where the water was coming from. And it was at the point of attachment on the main from a house. So since we had to replace that corporation stop, we rehooked the pipe up without any alterations to it. We didn't repair anybody's house service. We put a new corp stop in and we stopped the leak. And I mean, it was the kind of thing we had to do an exploratory dig. The hole was marked out for 6 feet because that's as close as we could get on that break. But you know, we fixed it as soon as we could. And to put this into perspective, the utility crew, like he'll tell you, has 5 guys. 1 guy's out on medical leave, 1 guy's reading meters, the other guy's flushing. For 2 weeks, there's been 2 people in the utility department to maintain hundreds of miles of wire, hundreds of miles of pipe, meters, everything you can imagine. We're overwhelmed. So, you know, I wish we could have got to that job a day or 2 sooner, but we're very short-staffed and we did the best we with the best we could, you know?
Is that why the Nixle went out today, that there was a water main break on West Foch? Was
What's
that
that?
related? Is that what what happened today, that a Nixle went out that said there was a water main break on West Foch today?
So what I'm saying is the corp stop blew off there, so, you know, we had to
But
saddle.
it got
the
fixed
pipe
on
and-
Friday, or it got fixed today?
Between Friday and Monday?
Yeah.
We typically don't make small repairs on weekends due to the overtime.
Oh.
We only run a 5-day shift.
So you just
We
let that
don't work
water
nights, we
just
don't work
go?
weekends.
So the water just goes?
It wasn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. If it was a main 6-inch water main break, we would have been out any day to fix it. This was a house service. So, you know, typically the department has never responded to small repairs on a weekend. If we had more people, if we ran 7 days, it'd be a different story, but we're a 5-day-a-week department.
I hear you, but it's not like you're going to be hiring 5 guys like next week or later on this year, right? So, not that I'm trying to be a negative here, but when are you flushing in the area of Van Loo?
What's that?
Van Loo Avenue, are you going to be flushing anytime soon in Van Loo? That's where I live, I just want to get
We
prepared.
got Van Loo's done.
Okay,
Between Thursday and last night, Van Loo is done.
okay. Thank you. What I would say is, in the future, if you're going to send out a Nixle like that on a Thursday, don't say you're going to get to it on Monday. And if a water main break was the cause, don't wait until Monday to send out the Nixle. Send it out like as soon as it's done, which in this case was Friday.
I'm just saying, it's hard to ascertain these things.
Anyone else? Seeing none? Oh, is there? Motion.
Michelle Bukowski, 28 Hill Street. This was my water on May 31st. We were told to notify the borough. This was at 5 p.m. Who am I notifying at the borough at 5 p.m.? I shouldn't have to notify the borough at 5 p.m., wait till the next day for an answer. I need to know immediately why my water is the way it is. I wouldn't give this to my dog. Councilman Revelinsky said you don't want to be the boy who cried wolf and overextend the use of Nixle alerts. As a resident paying a 30% increase since last year for this, I have every right to know at the time it is happening. And I'm going back to what Councilwoman Mayer said earlier about a strategic plan. You say you're short-staffed. You say you can't work on weekends unless it's a major emergency. These are the kinds of things that you need to take into consideration. Emergencies happen all the time, not just Monday through Friday, between 7 and 3 or 7 and 3:30 when your employees are working.
Anyone else?
Carolyn Viola, 17 DeBonis Drive. I'm not sure if this question is for Mr. Eckert or Councilman Revelinsky, but it's regarding the water violation that was posted to the borough site on May 31st.
Actually, the best person to probably answer that would be our licensed water operator, because for the folks that don't know, the licensed water operator is the one who basically ensures that that we're in compliance with DEP requirements. And I see him talking to John now, going, wait, which notice?
So there was a water violation that was posted to the borough site on May 31st, and it dates back to a violation from June 2017. So when I had a conversation with a gentleman from the NJ DEP, and I asked him about this violation and questioned why it would take so long to be posted, he said that the borough has 1 year to post from the date of the violation. So my question is, in the spirit of transparency and communication, why on earth would you wait an entire year, literally to the evening before you're required to do so, to post a violation about the safety of our water?
What's the violation?
This is what
Specific.
this is the requirement for additional sampling after we got the lead results last June. So we took the results in June, sent the report down to DEP. DEP said, okay, you got to do additional sampling, and by the time we took additional sampling, which was nearly immediate, and sent those reports down, DEP said, well, you didn't take those samples by the end of June.
Right.
So since that time, we've moved up all of our sampling. We did everything we were required to do, but because of the time frame, as I had explained on Facebook when a couple of people started commenting on it, is we've moved our timeframes up so that we can always be in compliance and not receive these. As John had indicated to me last week when we spoke about it, and I asked if we could get DEP here tonight to discuss, this is a Tier 3 violation. So it's merely a reporting violation. It doesn't indicate that we put anyone in the public at harm.
Right, and I read the violation pretty thoroughly, and I understand what it entails. My question is, why did you wait until the evening it was expiring? I mean, it's a little suspect that it's May 31st and it's going to expire the day later. It just doesn't seem very transparent.
And John, I asked John when he got the notification. I had just seen it last week. I know we discussed a violation that we were aware of from DEP coming back in probably November, because that's around election time, or October. And we had gotten the indication from DEP that we were going to be fined for not having it done in that time frame. And DEP came back and said, hey guys, it is a violation, but we understand it's because of the way the new laws are written. You didn't realize it had to be done by the end of June, or else you would have moved your entire program a month or two up. So they actually cut our violation in half as a result. So when we received this notification, I don't know, but
I mean, someone obviously knew that it was expiring, because it's a little too coincidental for it to be posted on the site on May 31st and it ends the next day.
We may have gotten a reminder. I don't know, John, because I saw your email from you saying, can you get it posted, and we got it posted 2 days later, I think.
What I can tell is the determination date was July 20th, 2017. I'm looking right at the DEP website, and it's the only reporting violation that's there, so it's got to be that one.
But when would we have gotten a notice from them saying that we have to notify public and post a specific notice?
I really don't know.
Okay. We'll get back to you on it.
That would be great.
Let's find out.
And I think that kind of goes back to some of the other commentary, that just the communication, I think tonight was a really good step in the right direction. I appreciate what you put together with your presentation, and just being really clear on who everyone needs to contact with the water violations. Facebook is people's outlet right now, because there's not really a sense that, other than you, Councilman Revelinsky, and Trina Mayer, and a couple others, that there's a lot of two-way conversation going on between the residents and the council. So I think that they go to Facebook to get grievances out and to see if any action can be taken, but it can be a blessing and a curse, and things spiral out of control. So I think if you could post on the website, especially on the much anticipated new website, what the protocol is and the chain of command of reporting these issues, that would be really helpful, so that residents who are experiencing these issues after hours know what they're supposed to do. I think that would be really helpful. And then regarding the strategic planning conversation, I got a little lost at the end. It sounded like everyone agreed that there was going to be a committee, but then it's kind of sounded like, Mayor Stieber, you were saying it was going to still exist within the finance committee. Is it going to be separate or part of finance?
The council could do it any way they like. What I was saying is that we have the finance, administration, and planning. We already have 3 members: council president, Councilman Revelinsky, Councilwoman Mayer. The vehicle's already there. Take it for a ride. Bring people in, put together your plans. It's ready to go.
Right. So I think that,
I mean, don't get me wrong. People in all these departments, from one end of the day to the other, they already have plans. Things that, I agree, it needs to be put in one place so it's comprehensive, that any resident can look at it and know what's our future, and if they want to comment on it.
Right.
I think it's all ready to go. They just have to really start putting everything down on paper, put it somewhere where everyone can see it so they know it exists.
So I would just urge folks taking what Councilwoman Mayer was saying pretty seriously, in that bringing in other stakeholders is what's really important, because the Finance Committee is really a stakeholder in what would be a strategic plan. They shouldn't be driving the strategic plan. They have input on it, along with the CFO, along with residents. It has to be multidisciplinary in order for it to be strategic. Otherwise, a Finance Committee is really just executing what the Strategic Planning Committee is setting forth. So it sounds like you have a piece of the puzzle, but not the full piece that has the overall
Right.
view.
What I would ask residents to do, and Councilwoman Mayer has said it also, is that if you have an idea, something that you want this town to be, you know, people should take the time to figure out what's important to me, what's important to my family. And a big part of it is what's going to make my investment in Milltown pay off. By the time I sell my house, I want it to be worth more than what I bought it for. I want the town to be in better shape all the way around, so the value of people wanting to move in here with their families is great. And I think it has to be driven from the residents. We need your input. If you have an idea about something with the water, with recreation, with public safety, bring it to your, not only just bring it to your council person, but, you know, when this thing is finally put together, make sure it appears, you know. And
but the resident, actually, on the Board of Ed, the residents actually helped to put it together.
Well,
so we
exactly.
went we had 4 different tiers that we would come up with. Then we invite the residents in, and they can get on a committee, or they can give their input. So I think that where I was going was that we should put something on the calendar and kick it off.
Oh, I agree, 100%.
So I'll wait to hear for when Council President Dixon puts that on our calendar, and we'll invite all the residents to come, and we can have a nice sort of a town hall to hear everybody's input, and then we can start the strategic planning process.
That sounds great.
From there.
I would suggest for maybe ease of things is that you have, like you said, a nice kickoff meeting.
Right.
But then what you probably want to do is have individual meetings.
Correct.
Again, anyone who has ideas in regarding to recreation programs in the future.
That's exactly right.
Now and in the future. Please come in, we're going to hold meetings this night, this night, and this night.
Right.
And take each department, get your information together, and that will generate your first blush at your strategic plan.
Correct.
Sounds great. Great. I'll follow up with Councilwoman Mayer on that. Thank
Great.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close audience comments and accept a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion by Council President Dixon, seconded by Councilwoman Kerber, that we adjourn. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. We are now adjourned.
This thing.
Yes, because I got really mad about it.
We'll leave it out.
Yes.
The June 11th, 2018 regular meeting of the Milltown Borough Council will now come to order. Will the clerk please call roll?
Council President Dixon?
Present.
Councilman Farkas?
Here.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Present.
Councilman Legati?
Here.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Here.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 present.
Thank you. Will the clerk please read the meeting statement?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular business meeting of the Borough Council was provided by the adoption of a resolution and the posting, filing, and forwarding of a copy of the same to the official borough newspapers, Home News Tribune, and Star Ledger Publishing Companies on February 20th, 2018. Public participation in this meeting will be permitted during public hearings and after the agenda of scheduled matters has been completed.
Thank you. Please rise for a moment of silence, followed by a salute to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda, we have audience comments and questions on resolutions, bills, and claims that are listed on the agenda. If you have any comments or questions, please use the microphone in the center of the room. Give your name and address for the record when recognized. Remember, comments and questions are limited to the resolutions and the bills and claims that are listed on the agenda. With that, I will open the audience comment. Seeing none, I will close the audience comment. Next on the agenda is bills and claims. Will the clerk please read Resolution 18-169 by title?
Authorizing the payment of bills, claims, and statements against the Borough of Milltown in the total amount of $1,040,581.23.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Council President Dixon, seconded by Councilman Revelinsky, that the resolution is adopted. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Okay, next we have the reports of standing committees and the introduction of resolutions. A consent resolution has been prepared to cover the 23 resolutions listed on this evening's agenda. If any member of the council would like any of the resolutions acted upon individually, please state the number and it will be removed from the consent resolution.
Mr. Mayor, 18183, please.
83?
Okay. 18179.
179. Any others?
18185, sir.
185. Any others? Seeing none, will the clerk please read the consent resolution, reminding the council that you are acting on all resolutions, excepting numbers 179, 183, and 185. Thank you.
Whereas pursuant to the rules of council, the council may establish a consent agenda for any regular or special meeting, and whereas the Borough Clerk has posted a consent agenda for this meeting. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Borough Council of the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, the consent agenda previously prepared by the Borough Clerk be approved without the necessity of having individual resolutions read by the Borough Clerk.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, seconded by Councilman Legati, that the resolution is adopted. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas, I'm sorry,
Aye.
I can't read. Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Will the clerk please read Resolution 18-179 by title, please?
Resolution granting application for club license renewal for Joyce Kilmer, post number 25, doing business as American Legion, license number 12-1231-007-001 for 2018-2019 license term.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
He can't do that.
I can't make that.
Oh, that's,
move
that
I was like wondering.
You have to
Okay, I have a
recuse yourself on this.
pardon me. I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, seconded by
I'll second.
Councilwoman Kerber, that the resolution is adopted. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Due to my position, I have to recuse myself from any vote on this particular one. That's why I had it pulled.
Thank you.
And just for the folks at home, this is for the liquor license for the Clark Moats.
No, liquor license for the American
for the
Legion.
American Legion. My apologies. Reading it by name, I wanted everyone to know exactly what it was at least.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Recuse.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 5 ayes and 1 abstention.
So moved. Will the clerk please read Resolution 18-183 by title, please?
Authorizing certain personnel actions, recreation pool, and SAC.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Council President Dixon, seconded by Councilman Legati, that the resolution is adopted. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just the reason I asked about this one is I see 3 persons on this resolution with 2 different job titles. And it's not really the money that it looks like it changes by 25 cents an hour. I just want to make sure that we're not going to run into some sort of issue with a person working a certain amount of hours and then not being able to, you know, fulfill the other portion of their job responsibilities under the other position. You know, I'm not sure how the laws work with it, you know, with kids working at the pool. And 40 hours or, you know, does that become time and a half or what? So
I would ask the attorney, do you see any potential problem in this?
No, I don't see a problem so long as they're fulfilling the responsibility of each position. I can't speak to this particular resolution, but typically, in some situation like this, so I'm going to speculate that the individual will hold 2 jobs, and at some points in time, they'll be serving as, for instance, gate attendant, and at other points in time, they'll be serving as lifeguard.
And I just wanted to make sure that there's no, like, you know, I have no problem with it, I just, you know, I don't want to pass something that can get us in trouble.
I'm assuming that some management level person is keeping track of the hours that an individual would be working in each position and then be paid accordingly.
And make sure that they're not scheduled to work 2 jobs at the same time. Which happens in government sometimes.
All the time.
Any other discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
So Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Will the clerk please read Resolution 18-185 by title, please?
Authorizing the Borough of Milltown to execute an extension to the agreement of the Public Power Association of New Jersey and New York Power Authority for purchase of energy.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that this resolution be adopted.
A second.
I have a motion by Council President Dixon, seconded by Councilman Revelinsky, that the motion that the resolution is adopted. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a little clarification. If somebody does anybody know why we're just going out every 3 months to extend this? Or are we waiting for a better price? Is there anybody that knows anything?
This is with the Power Association, the PPA-NJ. They have been looking for a new contract, a new pricing. However, they have not been able to procure what they're looking for. So what they've been doing is, this was a long-term contract, and they've been doing smaller extensions so as not to continue a long lease while they're researching other options to get better pricing.
And what kind of a long-term?
This was previously entered into, I believe it was, thank you, so about 13 years, right? Something like that? Under the Power PPA-NJ.
And they're looking to do another long-term one?
I don't know the terms of the agreement that they're looking for in a new agreement. I do know that they were looking for better pricing. So they were doing small term extensions on this existing agreement while they're looking so that there's no gap in service.
And does anybody know if doing these extensions, is the pricing changing with these little small extensions?
I was not given that information. I apologize. They only gave me, I don't attend the meeting, so I only got a summary, and that was not.
I would think that if it's an extension of the contract, we're still adhering to the same rates and everything.
Following the contract.
Yeah, I just hope that there's not some, well, if you extend it, by the way, we get to jack it up 5%, so hopefully our CFO, when they're here next.
This is not just the CFO, this is through the PPA-NJ, which is within
I understand.
9 agencies that have their own electric. We're all agreeing to extend to it, so all of us would be affected if that happened. It wouldn't just be our municipality.
I have no problem voting yes on this tonight, but if we do another 3-month extension, I'd like to know if the price is changing.
Absolutely.
Thank
I'll find out. Do you want me to see if I can get that information for you?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Who attends from the borough usually?
It was our business administrator previously, our BA CFO. I don't know what meetings have occurred recently to tell you if.
Yeah, I just know she always brought the info back to us and
Right.
said what's going on.
Right.
So.
And they discussed the potential long-term contract at those meetings too, right?
I got an email asking for me to extend this, and they gave me a small summary, which is why I can answer some of the questions.
Got it.
Background of it. I don't know what options they've pursued or how they're looking to procure the contract. As an authority, they have a little bit different regulations than we do as a municipality, so I'm not privy to that right now.
Thank you.
How often do they meet?
Usually once a month.
I believe they were about once a month, unless there was no pressing matter at that moment for them to meet, and then they would cancel.
Is there someone that can fill in for the CFO if we don't want to be not represented the next time?
Well, we have a split position, so it was the BA who was doing that.
BA?
Yeah, if yeah, absolutely. You could ask any member of our staff to go in her lieu, and we could reach out to them to attend those meetings. I don't know if they would recognize that person as a voting member at that point.
But just informational.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather be a fly on the wall than send a member of our staff, simply because if we've got monies in place for someone to work as our interim DA, I would think it falls under the requirements of that position. And I don't want 2 people to volunteer from the borough to go down, and now suddenly they're filling the position of interim BA, and we're paying them 3 people for the month. So I just want to make sure we've only got 1 designated person, and 1 person is receiving any additional funds or compensation.
I think the mayor should go.
Yeah. Well, it's my understanding that he hasn't gone to one of these yet, so.
I could use a vacation, that'd be awesome. Use a good day off.
You only have 1 person being compensated as BA currently.
Right, but if somewhere else were to go down from the borough, wouldn't that person then be able to, no? Okay.
Well, I mean,
Again,
it's during
making
business
sure
hours.
we're not getting into a
It's
sticky
during
wicket here.
their business hours, so yes, you could have, that's a personnel issue for compensation, but that you're not appointing them as BA necessarily.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Okay, next we move to the report of the Department of Finance, Administration and Planning, chaired by Council President Ron Dick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One report on Code Enforcement Officer. Department of Code Enforcement continues to receive the annual rental registration renewals for 2018. To date, and it is dated today, a total of 90 registrations have been received with a total of $10,000 received. A second round of renewal notices and late notices have been issued for any delinquent property owners. A total of 22 notices of violation have already been issued to property owners for unkept properties and high grass within the past 3 weeks alone. As a reminder, borough ordinance requires that yard areas be kept neat and clean and lawns trimmed on a regular basis. The owners of the Ford Avenue site have been issued additional notices of violations for the condition of the site recently. Now, municipal court summonses will be issued for the daily non-compliance. In addition, a water line break on the fire line on Ford Avenue was discovered approximately 2 weeks ago, and the repairs have been undertaken and completed by the property owner. Preparations are underway for the annual 4th of July separation, and several meetings are scheduled between OEM, the police, fire, and rescue squad. I have copies here of the notice of violations that were issued to Ford Avenue. They're dated 5/21 of 18. Basically tells them that they have to keep working at the site and cleaning up the site. And I'm not reading this whole thing, but cleaning up the site and keep reporting it, or they will be brought to court. And as you just heard, court summonses are going to be issued for non-compliance. I also have a notice of violation here to a bank in reference to 39 Pershing Avenue, which was months ago, was a house fire. The house has been deemed unsafe, and the order's been issued on 5/22 of 18 to have the home demolished. And several other instances, sanitation, weeds, these were all filed. Owner of the property has been notified, and they're in the process of following through with that. And as that is not followed through, then as per the rules and regulations, court summonses will be issued, and the bank that is the owners of that property will be brought before our municipal judge, and fines will be issued.
Great.
And that is my report, other than we are doing better throughout the borough. I follow this every month. I report on every month. The outstanding electric bills, a total of 198 locations have not paid electric. Totals $46,840.72. And if anyone follows what I do say at these meetings, that has been down for months now from over almost close to 200,000 when we started. So they're doing an excellent job on collecting that. As far as the water and sewer, that is also gone way down. And the water and sewer now is down to $56,714.91. Again, down from up in the six-figure range just several months ago. So people are starting to come forward paying their bills, and I'm happy to report that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Next, we will hear from the Department of Public Safety, chaired by Councilman Nick Ligotti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Milltown Fire Department month-end report for May 2018. Total number fire calls, 13. Total number training details, 2. Total number work details, 4. Total number meeting details, 1. Total number of miscellaneous details, 5. Total incidents, 25. The Milltown Fire Department is always looking for new members. Please stop by either firehouse on Mondays between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. or check our website, milltownfire.org, for details. Once again, we had a successful Memorial Day service this past year, and the Milltown Fire Department family host Ladies Auxiliary member Erna Cherico. The members of the fire department placed over 140 memorial flags on our departed members. We are currently awaiting the return of several applications, and 2 more were given out. On May 7th, the department participated in a live fire training at the County Fire Academy, assisted by the rescue squad. New driver training continues at both firehouses. Members attended a 2-day training session at the academy with the rescue squad for vehicle extrication. That concludes that report. I have a police report now. Give me a second. All right, the Milltown Police Department monthly report. Between May 11th, 2018 and June 5th, 2018, police have answered 1,326 calls for service. This number includes, but is not limited to, 911 and medical calls, traffic incidences, community outreach, walk-in reports, and public contact. Police conducted a total of 413 motor vehicle stops, which included special traffic details including cell phone, crosswalk, and seatbelt violations. 63 radar details and other traffic enforcement details were conducted in various locations during this time period. Police responded to 11 motor vehicle incidents and made 15 arrests, which include shoplifting, drugs, DWI, a carjacking, and warrant arrest. Milltown Police presented summer safety lectures to several Parkview school classes and continue to participate in safety drills. Milltown Police have been and continue conducting a hostile, extensive, active shooter training at 133 South Main Street, so residents may continue to see increased activity in that area. The Milltown Police Department would like to thank Jack Whitman and the staff at Heritage of Milltown for the unlimited access and use of this facility prior to its demolition. Without their help, this training would not be accessible due to the cost and facility availability. We'd also like to thank Sergeant Jim Vega and the New Jersey State Police Teams unit for their time and technical assistance. Milltown Police Department officers continue to maintain all mandated training requirements and will continue to train and practice the highest standards in law enforcement. Police will continue strict enforcement of traffic laws, including speeding, cell phone use, and pedestrians in crosswalks. Police would like to remind motorists that with warming weather comes more pedestrians. Please drive safely. The Milltown Police Department encourages residents to remain vigilant by calling and reporting any suspicious activity and traffic concerns to the Milltown Police Department at 732-828-1100. The Milltown Police Department is currently accepting applications for part-time public safety telecommunicators and crossing guards. Information is available through the police department and is posted within Borough Hall. As the school year is coming to an end, please use extra caution while driving, as pedestrian traffic will increase. Thank you, Chief Brian Cannell. And that concludes my report, sir.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the Department of Utilities, chaired by Councilman Rich Revelinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to let the folks know, we had a lengthy discussion earlier. Please, by all means, contact the utility department if you have an issue. If you can't get through during regular business hours, you can always leave a message with dispatch, but keep in mind that dispatch for the police department should really only be used for emergencies. So if you have a discolored water situation, and it's after regular business hours, please try to make the effort to call back the following morning so that we're not bothering our police department with non-emergency situations. Other than that, flushing continues around town. We're about halfway done. We're hoping that over the next 3 to 4 days we will complete. Currently we're on the east side of Main Street on which street? Sorry, Pardon Avenue, working our way south down towards Miller's Lane. So you may still continue to receive some discolored water at times. Again, check your faucet before throwing in some laundry or taking that shower in the morning just to check. Other than that, we are moving forward with utility markouts, daily pump checks, and all other aspects of the utility department. And Mr. Mayor, I believe that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the Department of Public Works and Recycling, chaired by Councilwoman Dorianne Kerber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. DPW Borough Council report for June 11th is as follows. The soccer field was painted for the conclusion of recreation soccer. The outside of the pool bathrooms have been painted. The slide mushroom water feature, the pool have been uncovered. The pool grounds have been annually cleaned. The pool furniture was taken out from storage. The pool bathrooms have been turned on. New cabinets and countertops have been installed in the manager's office. A volleyball court sand has been topped off and cleaned of debris. The horseshoe area has been painted and sand topped off. A broken toilet was repaired at the library and a new water fountain installed. Catch basins were repaired on Albert Avenue, Violet Terrace, and West Joffrey. There was a sinkhole on West Foch, which was repaired, trimmed trees, and cleaned up the playground area near Michelin Field. 2 dead trees were removed on Blueberry Drive and West Foch. The Main Street Firehouse grounds were cleaned up for the Memorial Day services. Street sweeping is ongoing as manpower permits. A resident tree fell on Michelin Field bathroom roof. It was removed and a temporary repair has been taken place. Road repair has taken place on Harkins, Orem, and West Foch. Pothole repair is ongoing as manpower permits. The DPW staff members alongside John Krantz and his staff from the Middlesex County Mosquito Commission removed 2 downed trees and blockages in the waterways behind Northbrook Drive and Highland Drive. Please check Channel 15 and milltownnewjersey.org for DPW updates. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the Department of Environmental, Health, and Social Services, chaired by Councilwoman Trina Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a sparsely attended meeting. It was just the chair, the vice chair, and me at the last meeting. We did discuss some pending issues. I informed them that the application to the zoning board for the convenience store on Main and Borum has been withdrawn without prejudice. They can reapply later. We also discussed ongoing grant requests. Our application for an ANJAC grant was denied. The commission also is hoping to interact with the scouts and other parties that are involved with the Schwenderman property cleanup because they would like to have further involvement with that project. We'd also like to schedule a time to meet with Mike sometime coming up, maybe not over the summer, but come the fall. He was scheduled to come to a meeting to discuss a few things, and then we had to reschedule. So I'll reach out and pick a date coming up. We also discussed oil tank removal. I know we've heard some things around town about that, and the commission would like some clarification of when they get notified. Is that only when it goes to DEP? Do we know?
An oil tank removal?
Yeah, like a homeowner oil tank. So
it would be, I always give them copies of
I always copy when I get notified from the DEP, but otherwise it would just be a permit through the building department.
So it's only not until you get something from the DEP
Right,
that goes
if I
to
get
the
something
environmental.
for an issue with it, I would forward it. I don't know if there's any protocol in the building department to forward
That's what
permits.
I thought, but I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. And then there was also a discussion about having a meeting with the public with the Environmental Commission, because someone was on social media posted an article from New Jersey 101.5 that caused some confusion. We do have a list of contaminated sites that are part of a DEP remediation plan, and the Environmental Commission is aware and has been keeping track of that list for quite some time, but it did cause some confusion, so Michael and Alan are amenable to having a meeting with the public if they have any further questions about these sites or any other questions for the Environmental Commission. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the Department of Recreation, chaired by Councilman Randy Farkas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We ask for everyone's patience during this busy season in the rec, SAC, and pool departments. If you have left a message, we will return them as soon as we are able to. SAC reminders. Summer SAC packets are still available and registration is ongoing. We are set to start up July 2nd. You may still register your child, but please include the late fee of $15 per child. Recreation. You may also still sign up your child for Albert Avenue Summer Recreation. Please add the late fee of $15 if doing so. The deadline has passed. Summer camp will run July 9th through August 17th, 9 a.m. to 12 noon at Albert Avenue Park. Please be advised that Fundamental Fours T-ball and spring soccer has been extended to June 16th due to the many rainouts. Trophy and picture distribution will be that day. Summer Adult Yoga. We are offering a Summer Adult Yoga program. Registration forms will be email blasted through the schools and available online next week. If you or your child has applied for a summer position and has not yet heard from the Recreation Department, please call us. There have been several letters that were sent and have not reached their destination. We are currently looking into this situation. We apologize for any inconvenience. However, this is out of our hands. We only have a few tickets for both the Major League Baseball games, Yankees vs. Tampa Bay, which is the Old Timers Day, this Sunday, June 17th, and Mets vs. the LA Dodgers, Sunday, June 24th. Please contact Recreation to reserve your seat. Think last-minute Father's Day and graduation gifts. Pool is opening this Saturday, June 16th. This is a free weekend for Milltown residents. Everyone is welcome. We are asking everyone who is coming to the pool opening weekend to bring a non-perishable food item for the Middlesex County Food Bank. We are excited for the upcoming season. We have a lineup of events for this year's pool season, such as Bingo Night, June 22nd, Patriotic Weekend, June 30th and July 1st, Sports Day, July 14th, Christmas in July, on July 25th, and Hawaiian Night, August 12th, and there'll be much more. Be sure to sign up to receive the constant contact news on the pool and all recreation department news. Message your email to us on Facebook or leave a message on the recreation office phone. Please be sure to speak clear and slow. And just a note, please be sure to bring your utility bill as proof of residency for the free pool weekend. In addition to the pool badge sales times listed on the flyer, all pool badges will be sold at the pool daily once the pool opens. That's the end of my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is introduction of ordinances. Tonight we have two. Will the clerk please read ordinance number 18-1462 by title?
Bond ordinance providing for the acquisition and installation of a new video camera system for the police department, appropriating $80,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $76,000 bonds and notes to finance a portion of the cost thereof, authorized in and by the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, New Jersey.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this ordinance. What is your pleasure?
I move that this ordinance be adopted on first reading, published according to law, and the public hearing be held at our next regularly scheduled council meeting on Monday, July 9th at 7 p.m. in council chambers in Borough Hall.
I second.
I have a motion by Councilman Ligotti, seconded by Councilman Farkas.
No, it's
was it
Dorian.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Yes.
Somebody.
I heard voices all over the place. That the ordinance be adopted on first reading, published according to law, and that a public hearing be held at our next regularly scheduled council meeting on July 9th, Monday, July 9th, 7 p.m. at Borough Hall. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Ligotti?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Will the clerk please read ordinance number 18-1463 by title, please?
An ordinance to amend the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Milltown, Chapter 14, Parks and Recreation Areas, Section 6.6D, Smoking Restriction.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this ordinance. What is your pleasure?
Move that this ordinance be adopted on first reading and published according to law, and that a public hearing be held at our next regularly scheduled council meeting to be held on July 9th at 7 p.m. in council chambers.
Second.
I have a motion by Council President Dixon, seconded by Councilman Ligotti, that the ordinance be adopted on first reading, published according to law, and that a public hearing be held at our next regularly scheduled council meeting, which will be Monday, July 9 at 7 p.m. at Borough Hall. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question about it. So it's adding section D, correct?
It's amending section D, which, for the smoking ordinance, the last item on that said previously that there was designated areas in the pool area that would allow for smoking. By a request of council, we removed that portion and just said it's a smoke-free property entirely.
The pool. But so if they can't smoke within the fenced-in area, are people just going to go walk right outside the fence, or what's the?
I thought
it was. Do we have no smoking in the parks, or is this just specific to the pool, and then they can just step outside the fence and smoke?
This is.
Or how is it going to be enforced too?
Well, however you would originally have enforced it, I don't know who the enforcement entity is, but before, from what I understand and speaking to Councilwoman Kerber, people were just going outside the specific area where smoking was precluded within the pool property, but still within full sight and breathing distance of every kid there. Now this would preclude smoking anywhere on the pool property.
But then I don't really want to leave it up to a 14-year-old gate attendant to have to tell somebody that's standing right outside the gate to, stop smoking.
They have to leave the property.
You can call the police department and say, hey. It's something they should be made aware of.
Pool, I guess I just wanted clarification on what is considered pool property. Is it up to the gazebo? Is it up to the parking lot? Or is it specifically just within the fenced-in area of the pool?
Furthermore, I was under the impression that we had previously banned smoking on
thought.
All borough parks.
Properties.
You have
properties, so.
There's other area. Hold on, I'm looking. I have it.
I thought that included vaping as well.
I don't know about that.
Well, let's add it to it.
There is no smoking in borough buildings. I do know that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. I'm looking. Smoking shall be prohibited in all public parks and recreation facilities owned or leased by the Borough of Milltown and all sorry.
Slow down.
I'm sorry, it also jumped. I apologize. Okay. Hold on. Now I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry, my iPad just jumped. Now I can't find it where I was reading from.
So you had what we were asking about.
There is in our borough code book already statements that say there's no smoking on borough property. And then there, obviously, no borough vehicles was put into a memo
So the Gloria Bradford Park would be included in that, right?
You'd have to fall under public properties.
Right, so then, well,
So
the
would
pool
right-
was
and
too.
so- and
The
so
pool's
would the right of
public,
way.
It just jumped
but the
into a
pool was
different email
public
entirely,
property.
There was designated smoking area.
So that was sort of grandfathered.
Right, there were designated smoking areas, but I don't
Now they're
believe.
being removed. Correct?
So, yeah, so now, once they leave the pool, they can't go in the park and smoke.
Nor can they walk on the street because that's public property also.
No.
You can't smoke on the street in buildings.
By ordinance, no, you can't.
This is the pool ordinance.
So when there was one, there was a designated smoking area in the pool last year, what was the idea for doing it outside of the pool? To send them outside of the pool area to smoke, or?
Well, even the staff cleaned up around the pool and found some, cigarette butts around the outside of the pool and the grass areas. So, and there was a lot of complaints. And then they came to a council meeting in 2016, the parents and lifeguards, and nothing was addressed. So there were still people smoking within the fenced-in area by the pool. So we decided that it's time to really address that issue.
Your current ordinance indicates that smoking is not permitted in the pool. Smoking is only permitted in areas designated by the Director of Recreation or pool manager. So that still allows for smoking on what would be considered pool property other than in the pool.
Okay.
So the change to this ordinance would preclude it anywhere on property that would be considered part of pool property. Now,
Okay.
what that delineation is, I can't say.
Okay. So, do we have to be clear on the fact that if they leave pool property, then they are going on to borough property, which also has an ordinance to prevent smoking?
I don't know if it does.
It may have just said borough building, which.
I only can find.
Right, yes, it did say borough buildings. I remember the previous ones I reviewed.
Where it expanded.
So is there smoking at like the Little League field?
I don't think it referred to parks. It just said borough buildings, most of the older ordinances, and when it was updated, it was just certain areas.
That's correct. You certainly can expand your ordinance. You can create an ordinance banning smoking in any public property within the borough.
I thought you said we had that right.
No, I didn't say that.
I thought we did. I'm sorry, I was trying to find it. I thought I had found it in here. We do have banning in borough vehicles and borough buildings. But it clarifies those buildings as to not property. And it says property located within, not surrounding.
Can we amend the ordinance to include any park?
It would be a different section. This ordinance is specific to the pool.
You would then, that would be a different ordinance. That would be under Chapter 14, Parks and Recreational Areas.
We've got to take some baby steps. We
Right.
approve this one and maybe get something else on the books.
And also, I was just wondering, can I be present for this?
As long as you're not smoking.
No, it says I'm absent. During the roll call, apparently I'm not here.
That's it, you can't vote.
So, but Dorian, for Public Works then, since it's going to open this weekend, if you don't want people to smoke inside the pool, I guess you're going to have to put some sort of smoking receptacle outside, because the expectation would be whoever smoked inside is just going to walk outside and smoke now, because we don't have an ordinance against that.
If we don't have a receptacle.
I mean, but so people aren't putting their butts out on the ground, they could have one of those, I don't know, buckets or whatever you do to extinguish cigarettes. Exactly.
We could get them for littering then, right?
There you go, citizens arrest.
Oh, it's tongue in cheek.
What about the statute of being within the entrance?
That's restaurants and.
It's not.
That statute wouldn't cover this. I think if you're putting something like that, you may almost be inviting smoking.
I know, but
for the limited
I guess
time
maybe
period
we
you
should
talk
see
about,
what, yes, I guess we could see how it
I think it might be
goes.
advisable to have a sign. If this ordinance is passed, it might be advisable to have signs prepared to go up saying no smoking anywhere on pool property, and that may discourage people there. as to the, you know, the next idea of putting something outside of what's designated as pool property, that's...
Okay. We'll see how it goes, I guess.
Yes, New Jersey Prevention provided free signs for us, so we already have them. They can go up.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legatti?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Next on the agenda is old business. Is there any old business to come before the council this evening? Hearing none. Is there any new business to come before the council this evening? Hearing none. Audience comments. Please state your name and address in the microphone in the center of the room for identification. With that, I'll open audience comments. Seeing none, I will close audience comments. Council comments.
I have 2, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to take advantage of my position, and I am going to wish Bob Skarzinski a happy 82nd birthday. He is a former Grand Marshal of our 4th of July parade. He is also the president of the men's club at the Senior Center, and he's a really good guy. And the other perk I'm going to do is we won't meet until July, and I would like to wish my daughter Elizabeth a happy 21st birthday.
There you go. Wow.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, before I get locked out of the house tonight, I'd like to wish my wife a happy 8th anniversary for tomorrow, and I'm sorry I'll be missing it because of a meeting. So.
Yeah, well, we're probably going to be here working through it.
Yeah.
And happy 4th of July, and happy Father's Day to all of you fathers. I am actually going on the trip to Yankee Stadium on Father's Day for the Old Timers game. But I do have some actual comment. I know it's getting late. I just wanted to make a quick comment. You know, we talked earlier about grants and things. I was wondering if we have any sort of tracking to see, you know, we always talk about applying for grants, however, we never hear when we don't get them. So a lot of times it appears like we're flush with money that we're getting for grants. So do we have a way to, I know that I've asked Denise and she said it's very, very little that we actually get in grant money. Do we keep track of that, Gabriella, what we get?
It would definitely be tracked in a budget for where you have it in, and if it's if we receive those funds after the budget's adopted, we do Chapter 159.
Okay.
Last year, I think we did 3 or 4 Chapter 159s, but those are the ones that we get after the adoption of the budget. So it's not to say that those are the only funds that we get, because some of them Denise may have received during the preparation, so she can put them in as revenue.
And is it the same thing with all the fines? Do we keep track of the fines that we collect for various things? Like, are we going to keep track of the Ford Avenue fines?
Those are kept track of in the court offices, because generally we issue citations, but then once it's adjudicated, the judge has discretion over those fines if they're ranged.
Correct.
So it would be in the court system, and then I'm sure it would be in our revenue sources in our budget noted that they're fines. The court would have a more distinct designation of how those fines are accumulated.
Because the reason I bring this up is for the general accountability of us sitting up here, because we hear a lot of things that are thrown out at meetings about fines, about grants, and some other things that I know that the public has tried to keep us accountable for, and yet haven't gotten an answer for. There's been a few things thrown out, and I have to say, even I'm on council and I don't get the answer, one of which was the millions of dollars that floated into the Raritan Bay of equipment. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that we lost when stuff flooded, but what's the millions of dollars of equipment that floated into Raritan Bay? That's been brought up at about 2 meetings, and I yet to have gotten any answer about the millions and millions of dollars that we reported to insurance that floated into Raritan Bay. Does anybody have an answer for that?
I think the only answer that we have is we've spent a ton of money in overtime moving things out of there when it floods. The money that we spend when the substation used to flood to move our equipment, the damage to the structure over there at the DPW facility. I mean, has anyone put an actual dollar amount on it? I'd say no. But there's also a lot of material that is, if you go down the Lawrence Brook, you'll find telephone poles down there.
I understand
at $8 grand a pop, how many are there that we can see? How many are there that floated away year after year? So things have come and gone. The point is, we don't want to lose any more and waste money.
Ask Jeff and our insurance agent, other than Jeff, FEMA and everybody else that's reimbursed us over the years, what that total is.
Oh, well, I'd like to see that.
Fine, ask for it.
I did.
Ask somebody that has those figures. I don't have them in front of me.
But you're the one that made the comment about
I
2
made
or
the
3
comment
times
that
at a
if I
meeting.
wanted it, I'd be smart enough to know where to ask for it and get it. Jesus, Joseph.
Well, you would go through the CFO. She would mark it in her system.
We
Just
don't
like
have a
grants, like we
CFO
get
right now.
Well, we do get DPW grants, New Jersey Clean Communities, and we also get from Senior Center. We get grants for that. We get a lot of grants. It's not, and she puts it when I received it, when I asked for it, she would put that as a grant, and you run the report and have the information.
And
so
then-
there are several that we get yearly.
How about the, when we had the water meeting, the confidential agreement with New Brunswick? I know that residents have Oprah'd that and asked for an answer about that, and they haven't gotten any response. Do we have any response about that? Council President Dixon?
Sure. My response to that is that I honor an agreement. Our agreement, maybe council will correct me, we have an agreement that we're not to talk about it. I don't talk about it. Whether somebody Oprahs it and gets it does not release me from my agreement.
Your statement
Correct or not
was
correct?
that we couldn't raise the
Excuse me,
rates
I'm
over
asking
10
a
years.
question of the borough attorney, not you. Am I
I'm just
honored
asking
by
you to
that
clarify
agreement?
your
Am I
statement.
honored by that agreement?
If there is a confidentiality clause, the council is bound by the confidentiality clause. If there's an Oprah request which comes in for a settlement agreement, that generally is trumped, almost always trumped by, Oprah trumps the non-disclosure, but it doesn't release a council member from the confidentiality clause.
There was no confidentiality regarding the fact that New Brunswick didn't tell us that we couldn't raise our rates.
First of all, that's not what it was about.
That's what you said at the meeting.
Why do you ask questions if you keep talking? That's been said several times. That's not what the confidentiality statement was. That's number one. And now that the borough attorney told me that we could possibly answer that, I will check with the people that formed that and see what their opinions are. Not against your opinion. See how they feel towards that. Because I know what they said. I know what the agreement was. I was on council at that time. That's it. Now you can talk.
I just was wondering then why you didn't answer the email that you got from the resident.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Why didn't you answer the email that you got from the resident asking that
Because as far as I'm
question?
concerned, it's a confidential agreement. There's nothing to say.
So you
I've
could have
said that
answered
at
and said
council
that.
meetings. I don't have to say it to individual people.
Well, I
I've said
think
at
that
council meetings.
that goes to exactly why I brought it up, that we're accountable to the residents of Milltown. You
I'm
can't,
also accountable to my soul and to the people that's a confidential agreement. That's how it goes. I have honor.
Okay, well, we're not getting anywhere with
That's
this,
right, we're
so
not.
let's move on. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close council comments. Mayor comments? None. Nick, will you please read the resolution to enter into executive session?
Absolutely, sir. All righty. I move that the resolution to enter into executive session be approved by council and that council will enter executive session immediately following the vacation of council chambers by the public.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move
I
that this
second.
resolution be adopted.
I second it.
Did you say that you reserved right to take action? I didn't hear.
No action, I did.
No, yes, action.
reserved the right.
I have to.
Oh, he's amending it to say yes action.
Yes, action.
Would you change your
Yes,
motion
action.
to
Yes,
accept
action.
the action?
Absolutely.
And the second?
I second, yes.
Okay, I have a motion by Council President Dixon, seconded by Councilwoman Kerber, that the resolution is adopted as amended. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
No. Doesn't matter, we're doing it anyway. Aye.
I was like, Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes, I think.
So moved. Okay, we're now in executive session. We will resume in about 5 minutes. So you got 5 minutes. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
You guys aren't gonna let me go home, so.
We entered into executive session.